open to anyone, all around the world.
Holy smokes!
The Chess.com Global Championship offers the dream of playing against the best.
Whoa!
And hey, have we mentioned there's also $1 million at stake?
The total pot is $1 million.
No, that is not a typo. The prizes are unbelievably generous.
We began with thousands of players. Now only dozens remain.
Why is he moving? They can just go. Wow.
Lost on time.
Wesley So makes it through 3-0.
The CGC knockout phase has arrived. There are those who played their way in, and some are here thanks to their well-earned reputations. No matter who you are, things are about to get very, very real.
Leonard Dominguez, he moves on to the round of 16.
A trip to the CGC finals and a clean shot at the largest first-place prize of the year. My friends, it's the CGC round of 32. Who will take the next step to Toronto?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chess.com Global Championship. Today is a Friday. It is a beautiful day, and no better day to contest some chess and determine an inch closer to Toronto and to the final 8. I'm here, Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky, alongside my good friend, my partner, the former world champion, Grandmaster Robert Hess. Robert, good afternoon to you. Are you ready to watch some more CGC?
Oh, Daniel, I am stoked. Each and every day that we get to cover the action is a wonderful one because like yesterday, like the day before, we have great matches in store for everybody who tunes in.
We absolutely do, and we will be jumping into those matches pretty shortly. Let's start with a format overview. The CGC is a knockout event. Matches last for 4 games with a time control of 15 minutes and 2 seconds. If you lose a match, then you are out of the tournament. In the event of a 2-2 tie, we have an Armageddon. Robert, we have had a lot of Armageddons at this advanced stage in the CGC. Nothing more exciting than a knockout format.
No, there really isn't. The Armageddon is when everything gets settled with the players bid. That's always a lot of fun. But there are 4 games. Well, maybe we'll put an asterisk on that because some players win in just 3. But 4 games of 15 plus 2. And that's where all the excitement starts out.
Indeed. We have 3 matches today. 3 incredibly exciting matches. Xiong Duda against Wang Hao. Shakir Mamedyarov against Alexei Sarana, who has terrorized online chess for the past year. And Jeffrey Xiong faces off against Benjamin Bach. Man, we'll have the same problem that we have every time, Robert, at the CGC, which is we will not know which match to turn to because all of them sound equally exciting.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned all those big names. I mean, that's what the Global Championship is all about. There are no weak customers in this field, and I'm particularly interested, if I have to say so myself, in the Mamedyarov-Sarana matchup, Danya. That one is going to be electric.
Ooh, it is indeed. But let's take a slightly wider view. Let's see where we got here from as we look at all of the big names that have tried their luck and tried their best to qualify to Toronto, the final 8, book their tickets. So many amazing players have already been knocked out, and so many amazing players are still in the tournament. Robert, when I look at this graphic, like my eyes just go from the left side to the right side to the left side again, and they never settle on any place in particular, except maybe the middle.
I was going to say I'm not overly patriotic, but I see many American flags jutting out in the round of 16. Leonard Dominguez, Wesley So, Fabiano Caruana, Sam Sevian have all booked their tickets to the round of 16. And Dmitry Andreikin, he's down at the bottom left of your screen there. He's going to play against Fabiano Caruana, but 4 Americans already are dancing into this round of 16.
Indeed, and today we will see who will join them today. Groups B and C are contesting matches. You can see here, Xiong Duda survived a tough first-round matchup against Indian Grandmaster Guha. Now he faces an even more difficult trial. Wang Hao retired about a year ago. He's unretired, much to the chagrin of Xiong Duda, who has to face him today. But Robert, I'm on completely the same page. Alexei Sarana against Shakir Mamedyarov. That is the marquee matchup for today. We have a super grandmaster, an established monster against somebody who has caught people's eyes in the past year, somebody who might be below 2,700, but who nobody wants to face.
Yeah, and I think people don't quite get how big of a victory that was against Vidit Gujrathi. Many people thought, oh, Alexei Sarana, he's becoming an increasingly familiar name. But the Shusha chess event that's happening right now, Mamedyarov went 8 out of 9 in a rapid. Vidit Gujrathi went 7 out of 9. So Sarana demolishing Vidit in that matchup, that's a good sign for Sarana fans out there who think he may upset Mamedyarov as well.
We'll have to see. It's going to be super exciting. Group B will be contested. Group C is also contested today. Yesterday, we saw Wesley So defeating Vasil Ivanchuk. Largely, it was a match played on the clock. Heartbreaking way to end the tournament for Ivanchuk, but Wesley moves on. Who will he be playing in the round of 16? Will it be Jeffrey Xiong, the American young juggernaut, or will it be Benjamin Buck, who has also made a name for himself, Robert, as one of the most solid players, period. He is never an easy customer. No such thing as an easy match against Benjamin Buck.
Yeah, what an interesting matchup this is, because Bach against Grishuk in the opening round, he was as solid gets. I mean, the guy was a rock, and that's why he drew all 4 games before winning in Armageddon. And Jeffrey Xiong, he's an explorer. He likes to adventure in the opening. He has played very well in over-the-board events like the St. Louis Rapid Tournament, where he went 4.5 out of 9 and beat Fabiano Caruana. So both these players have their shot at the round of 16. It's going to be a really interesting battle.
It is indeed. And of course, another interesting battle is the one that we have a matchup card for. That is JKD, Yang Shistov Duda, against Wang Hao. I really, looking at this card, can't believe how young they are. Wang Hao literally retired from chess 2 years ago, and he hasn't even hit the halfway mark of the 3rd decade of his life, Robert. And not to mention Yang Shistov Duda. I remember him playing the under 10 World Championship like what feels like 20 years ago, and he's only 24 years old, yet he has made such a name for himself in top-level chess already.
And you could argue that 2022 has been a bit of a down year in some ways for Jan Shistov. He did not perform up to his standards in the candidates. He did not have a great Olympiad team performance for the Polish team, I should say. However, when you're talking about rapid chess, he is definitely not putting the JK in JKD, because he is a menace. He is an absolute force. He's won many of the most prestigious events with the Super Grandmasters. He's over 2,800 over the board and online in rapid chess. So I think Wang Hao will have his hands full, but don't count out the veteran Chinese Grandmaster. Duda, you know full well how strong he can be.
He's unbelievably solid. He has an opening repertoire perfectly suited to rapid chess. And yet it appears that one group of people that have discounted Wang Hao is our community. As we take a look at our community predictions here, 88% voted Jan Shistov Duda through to the top, to the final 16. That is a crazy prediction if you ask me. I think the Jeffrey Xiong Benjamin Bach prediction and perhaps the shock against Alexei Sarana prediction are a little bit closer to reality, but Robert, people seem, very much, they look at the ratings, they make their judgment based on the ratings. I think people are forgetting that Alexei Sarana actually defeated Vidit and basically outperforms his rating every single time he plays online.
Sarana is a beast, right? He's one of those guys who's well prepared. He's really fast. If you're in time trouble against him, good luck. And the top matchup, Duda against Wang Hao, that makes sense, right? Duda is the heavy favorite. Maybe that's a little more lopsided than we'd expect. But down in the bottom there with Jeffrey and Benjamin, Danya, it's interesting because only 7% of people picked that matchup to happen. But of the people who picked that matchup, many of them believed in Bach. So there are Benjamin Bach believers, B cubed, out there just rooting for their streamer.
Yeah, you can debate whether there is a particular kind of style that caters to success in the knockout format. And I really think there is. I think that solid styles where, you're not prone to making too many blunders, you don't get too high with the highs and too low with the lows, that really can allow you to outlast a lot of players throughout a 4-game span. Benjamin Bach is incredibly hard to defeat with the white pieces. He's got a solid opening repertoire. So he's got that grittiness, that tenacity, and that overall centeredness and lack of tilt. All of these qualities, I think, make you a very fearsome contender and a very difficult matchup in the knockout format.
Oh, for sure. And the lower rated players, they get the black pieces in that first game of 4. And so they really need to hold. The last thing you want is to hand your opponent a lead in the match. So as we see the players on screen here, Jan Duda, I mean, he looks like an angel right now with the light in the background.
He's
and
so relaxed, just sitting back.
He's stretching. He's getting ready for the game. And Wang Hao is like right up close to the camera. He's trying to be the star of the show today.
He's like, am I connected? All right, let me just make sure everything's in order. Jan Duda sipping on his whatever he's sipping on. I don't actually know whether he's sipping on anything at all. That's just what I'm supposed to say as a commentator. Sipping on his water, sitting back in his chair, preparing to kill and get into the round of 16. But let me tell you, the butterflies in their stomach, that's always happening. No matter how many matches you've played, when you're playing a knockout match, you're feeling those butterflies as the first game gets underway.
Right. And Duda here, he may be relaxed for now, but don't be surprised if we get the 5-head cam as he leans in, tries to study the position. But both of these players respect their opponents. They are luminaries of the game. And even though they're young, you mentioned that Wang Hao's only 33 and he's already retired and unretired. He learned from Michael Jordan a little bit there. But Wang Hao, I mean, the guy, there's a reason he was in the candidates. He won the Isle of Man, the Grand Swiss tournament there. That was an unbelievable performance. So we know that he can duke it out with the best of them.
Yeah, people forget that he was in the candidates. And he's over 2,700, has been over 2,700 for a very long time. I feel that Wang Hao's biggest challenge is going to be to survive on the clock. Jan Duda isn't exactly MVL, but his time management is generally excellent. Wang Hao has had problems with time pressure in the past. So for me, the most important thing for Wang Hao is going to be to play the first 15 to 20 moves relatively fast. It keeps some time on his clock. And in terms of his playing style and his opening repertoire, I think he's got the whole package, basically.
Yes, he does. And the thing about this matchup, and I wonder if you'll back me up on this, Danya, is that sometimes Jan Krzysztof, he gets a little bit too aggressive. He wants to win every single game. And when you're playing somebody with a repertoire as solid as Wang Hao's, like we might see a Petrov here, that can backfire. Because no Petrov, a Sicilian.
Whoa. Yeah, I was fully expecting a Petrov as well. Instead, we have a Rosalimo.
So we'll see which variation the players go down here. But at some point, you know that White's about to take this knight on c6 and double the pawns, although Jan Krzysztof aiming for these d4 pushes. Down in these positions, I think Gukesh has been playing them very frequently from the black side.
Yeah, this E7, E5 line, I don't remember exactly who popularized it. I know Magnus Carlsen kind of dabbled in these E5 variations at one point. This is supposed to be very dangerous for black because look at that D6 square. That D6 square is a gaping hole in black's position. And I have seen a lot of games, as you're indicating, Robert, where white throws the bishop onto D6, and that bishop remains there basically for the rest of the game.
Yeah, that's not what you can afford here. Look at the pawn structure. They're just weak dark squares everywhere. A quick b5. So the good news for black is that he has completed his minor piece development and he's ready to castle. So Danya, what do we make? There's an extra pawn on d4 for black. It is doubled and isolated here. And as you're talking about, the bishop on d6 is an excellent piece. But how are we going to get our material back, or are we just going to play around it?
Yeah, we're probably playing around it. I mean, I think a big question for white is whether he wanted to play e4, e5. Instead, you can see Duda putting the knight on g5 and the queen on f3, and he's immediately piling up pressure on f7. But Robert, what is the follow-up going to be? Because none of white's pieces are anchored. None of them are screwed in. Black is going to play h6 and toss the knight out of g5. So Jan Krzysztof better have a contingency plan established for how he's going to rearrange his pieces when Wang Hao starts kicking them out of their squares.
And what a move queen g3 is. He's allowing his knight back to f3.
Great move.
We might see e5 in the future, but look at how quickly Wang Hao was playing. Danya, this is preparation.
And this is exactly what I was talking about. He's off to a good start. He's got all of his time, and he's still playing instantly. Rook c8, preparing knight c4. And it does appear that he's out-prepared Jan Krzysztof, who is now taking his time.
What an idea, because many people would have just taken this bishop on b3, seeing it as a threat. But it's actually not a threat tactically, because this pawn on g6 is loose. We'll show a quick variation here, because I think it's important to highlight the fact that this pawn f7 is pinned. But it's not really pinned, because after it takes and queen takes g6, I remove the piece that's pinning the pawn on f7. So if you simply take back, you lose your queen on g6.
That's a great line. It's a very important line. And it's also important that the bishop has no safe squares on that diagonal. If the white pawn was on a3, then perhaps the bishop could slink away to a2. But right now, there's no time for that. We see young Krzysztof involving his other rook and putting it on e1. And I guess the big question for black is, do you play knight c4? Or do you improve your position in other ways? Wang Hao finally starting to use his clock.
That's the best news for young Krzysztof here, is that at long last, okay, I was going to say...
At long last, he's taking nope.
No, I mean, I wasn't looking at him on screen. Maybe he just was cracking his knuckles, and that's the only reason he didn't play a quicker move. But queen d8 here, I can't quite grasp everything that's happening, Don.
And you know what he just did there, and you know what that means about what he feels about his position. Took a sip of water.
He's feeling it. I think actually just might be sweating.
Yeah, well, maybe he should take that sweatshirt off then.
And
I don't know. Queen d8. What is the point? What is the exact specific point of that move? Is he opening up the e8 square for a reason, or is he trying to eventually send the queen to b6?
What do you I had
intuiting from this move?
I intuit nothing. Was there maybe a bishop d5 with the queen on e8?
That might very well be it.
Right, because opening up the e5 would have been a disaster.
Black wants to preserve the power to take on b3 on demand at any given moment, or even put the knight on c4 and lock out the bishop.
So it's so interesting how we tend to recommend to our students and viewers, you keep the tension, but we usually say that when there are pawns attacking one another. But this tension right here with knight takes b3 and knight c4 is a different form of tension, but it's being kept in knight e5, Danya. That takes away the c4 square. It threatens knight f7 and knight takes g6 tactics. Is it time at long last to take his bishop?
I think it might be time. I think the pressure has reached a boiling point. My inclination would be to take on b3 and try to work on that d6 bishop. Maybe play rook f8 to e8 and then try to put a queen on b6. But Robert, I would be very, very scared to have this position without filigree preparation. I would be terrified to have this with black.
You mean you don't like the thought of a knight hopping into c5, the bishop and both knights on these squares? That just doesn't look fun.
Well, it looks amazing for black. A lot of space, good prospects for your pieces, everything you could ask for in a position.
Is there? I guess there isn't, but I'm wondering if at some point there's a tactic like this. Yeah.
So I thought about taking on b3, knight takes b3, and then bishop takes e4. The issue is that white has the intermezzo, bishop takes e7, but even then, queen takes e7, rook e4. The story isn't over. Black has d6. What a line.
And the rook is loose on e4. This is actually a very important variation because after bishop takes e4, if you simply take back here, the whole point was knight f5 with a fork of queen and bishop, and then king is safe and you're up material. So wait a second. What is the punishment after knight b3? And after knight b3, bishop takes e4.
No, it's very hard to say. Queen h4. There is once again knight f5, attacking the queen, attacking the bishop. I think that's exactly what Wang Hao is calculating, and maybe that's a good opportunity for us to catch a glimpse of the start of the other two games.
Let's do just that. We'll go to the matchup between Mamedyarov and Alexei Sarana. Mamedyarov actually played a bunch of rapid games today in Shusha chess, and he didn't just play. He won. He finished the rapid portion 8 out of 9, Danya. And Alexei Sarana, he's himself is in a tournament. So both these players over the board online, they're playing on all cylinders. And what do you make of this opening choice?
I mean, the pawn structure looks totally normal. This looks like a classic Carlsbad structure. The piece placement, not so normal. The bishop on f4, the knight on g3. You don't see that arrangement every day in the Carlsbad. And I think black is simply, threatening might be a strong word because after g5, the bishop isn't trapped. But after g5, the bishop has to move on to e5. And knight takes e5 could be quite an unpleasant move for white to face. So I think Shakhriyar might be considering a move like h4. No, bishop d3. He ignores that possibility.
Well, something that a certain Daniel Naroditsky would make mention of is if this pawn goes to g5, the f5 square is permanently under white's control. So I'm with you that g5 looks tempting in many different positions, but you have to be absolutely certain that you're willing and able to give up this f5 square without paying a price.
And yet Alexei is exactly, correct me if I'm wrong, exactly the kind of player who wouldn't mind playing a move like g5 against Mamedyarov. He doesn't make decisions based on who he plays. I know a lot of players who would rule this move out simply on principle. I'm playing Mamedyarov. I don't want to make a risky move like this in game one. But that's what makes Alexei scary. He makes decisions based on the position on the board, not necessarily, some sort of other considerations.
Right. He is very objective, and he's looking at this position, trying to dig deep because the move g5 is available, or he could just swap bishops, maybe develop his dark square bishop, but it's not going to be so easy as the f5 square will permanently be one that he's going to have to keep an eye out for. So Mamedyarov did just take a sip of water there. I saw that. I don't think he believes he's winning. I think he's just tired after a long day of chess.
Alexei might as well resign here. That's it. No, nothing else to commentate about. I think we should switch to the other game. This one's over.
Well, let's actually check on our third game in action right now. We have Jeffrey Xiong against Benjamin Bach. Jeffrey with the white pieces, and we're going to quickly go through the opening just to see how we got here. It was a symmetrical English, Danya. So first of all, maybe a bit of a surprise from Jeffrey's perspective.
I mean, Jeffrey basically plays everything with both colors, but yeah, 1c4, not a move that I remember him playing too frequently. I was more expecting 1e4. C4 is kind of the move you make now, Robert, when you want to take your opponent out of theory fast, and they get a pretty fresh position. I mean, this is a pretty interesting structure. Bishop d3 to defend e4, and e5 by Benjamin to sort of carve out control over the dark squares in the center. Typical move in such positions.
For sure. I think many people are tempted to play d5 very early, but e5 is a way to go. Castles and h3. So Jeffrey playing very calmly. Don't just play d5. You may find yourself in trouble because at the end of the variation, there's a queen on d1 happily situated to meet the pieces that land on d5. Just to show you that quickly how a blunder could happen is if you think that this is going to work out for you. The answer is it is not, because after queen takes d5, this is the problem. Bishop takes h7 check.
And notice the clock, by the way. Benjamin already down below 11 minutes. Jeffrey still has over 15 minutes on the clock. And he continues to play instantly. And when somebody plays the move f2, f4 instantly, you start feeling that lump form in your throat. Yeah, and you know what lump I'm talking about. We've all been there.
Oh, yes. This is not fun if you're playing this from the black side, because you recognize here comes an attack. And look at how quickly Jeffrey is playing.
This is crazy. Could this still be preparation?
It 100% is preparation. And that is surprising to me, Danya. Not because Jeffrey isn't one of the best players in the world. Obviously he is. But I don't typically consider him a theoretician. And here he goes. He's saying, I'm going to launch some kind of kingside attack and watch out, Benjamin Bach.
Yeah, it's clear that Jeffrey's strategy is to take Benjamin out of his comfort zone. You can look at the eval bar and you can say, this is innocuous. Benjamin Bach doesn't know and doesn't care what the eval bar is. He sees queen h4, and he sees the possibility of a rook lift to g3. I would take white here any day of the week, especially Friday.
Yes, indeed. I'm with you. And this bishop on c8 doesn't even know where to go. If you play bishop e6, thank you very much for allowing me to play f5, and then bishop g5 and g4. Let's get a storm going on the king's side. And I don't think that there are enough umbrellas in the world to meet that kind of avalanche of attack. So I'm not liking this for black at the moment, even though I see the eval bar says level.
Yeah, but the time situation is anything but level, and it seems that Benjamin is the one who has to make all of the decisions. We'll leave him to make those decisions as we navigate over to, we have just a cornucopia. We've got all of the games are interesting. What catches your eye?
I think let's quickly go back to Mamedyarov Sarana and then to Duda against Wang Hao, because as I look here, g5 definitely happened in this game. The bishops were traded on d3. We saw pawn g5 and then a capture and knight d7. So white reinforces the pawn with f4. The black knight comes to c5.
Spicy.
It is really spicy, and I don't know if I can handle it.
This is... I would say this is up Mamedyarov's alley, but this is also up Alexei Sarana's alley, because I think their playing styles are actually quite similar. Now, intuitively, I prefer white here. You're pointing out the pawns on f4 and e5. That's just a very unpleasant kind of growth that's permeated black's position and is actively taking away important development squares, Robert. f6 for the queen, d6 for the dark squared bishop. Those are squares you might have wanted to employ. Now you're going to have to work around them. And the main problem, the elephant in the room, is the f5 square and the fact that white's knight is uniquely positioned to take advantage of it.
For sure, but black may strike in the center with a timely d4. Maybe g takes f4 first and d4, and this could heat up very quickly. So if you play d4, I expect a rook to land on d1, perhaps castle queenside. But the point is that this is a really fighting position with two of the most fighting players on the planet. So let's leave them to it. Look at them on camera here. We got a close-up. Mamedyarov, he's really thinking, and Sarana looks chill, honestly.
Nice dressing up for the occasion, wearing a nice... I don't know what to call that. Suit, jacket, blazer? I know the Russian word for it. I don't know what you call that.
Isn't it
just a shirt?
Yeah, just a dress shirt.
Just a dress shirt. Hey, rubashka. Yeah. All right.
Well, now Mamedyarov is looking, he's looking like he needs a nap. He's got his hand on his chin over there. He's leaning in. And
I can't imagine Robert playing a day of Rapid and then having to face Alexis Sarana in the CGC in the evening.
And I think Sarana played a classical game, if I'm not mistaken. So both these players have had a very long day of chess, and it's only just beginning. But we'll leave them to it. Mamedyarov, he's got his hand on his head, just thinking about the position. But let's go to Duda against Wang Hao, because there's been a big turn of events in that one. We see that there's a rook missing on f8, and yet the eval bar says, I don't see the issue.
No rook, no problem. White is up in exchange. Obviously, black has a minor piece. Let's see how that happened. I think Wang Hao voluntarily sacrificed the exchange with a move knight c6. The idea is pretty clear, Robert. He's just trying to get rid of that sort of cancerous mass in the center. He's trying to say, get out of the center, get out of my face. And get out of the face, Jan Krzysztof Duda does, but it comes at a cost. Is it a worthwhile cost? What do you make of the position?
I first want to note that bishop takes h6 would have been a terrible blunder because of queen h4, threatening h2 and winning this bishop over here. So don't go for that. That's why the bishop went to a3. And I like it for black. We can't forget that black started this whole tactical sequence a pawn ahead. So black has a bishop on b7 and a pawn for the rook. More activity along the c file, a bishop staring at the white king side. And if you're not looking out for it, this bishop on a3 could be trapped. So the initial position right now, Danya, I like for black. I also could see this in the next 5 moves being great for white.
Yeah, I think the next couple of moves are going to be critical because we are going to see if white is able to repel black's initiative or if Wang Hao can essentially stabilize the initiative or maybe transform it into something a little bit more tangible. Love the move. Well, was going to say I love the move queen h3 because it attacks h6 and playing with tempo is mission critical for both sides here as they struggle for control of the initiative. The eval bar hates this move, and I think it might be precisely because of what Wang Hao just did there, sacrificing another pawn. But if Jan Krzysztof Duda takes on c4, after b takes c4, that pawn mass in the center is mighty dangerous.
That pawn mass is definitely dangerous, just like Mamedyarov's is against Alexis Sarana. So let's go over there because that game, oh my goodness, look at this.
Things have gone off the rails for Alexei here.
They have, because he took on f4, which I said was a possibility, but he didn't follow it up with a pawn push in the center. Instead, he brings his queen to h4, allowing white to castle to defend this, and knight f5 is what we've been talking about. Now it's going to come with tempo.
And Alexei plays rook g8, but you know, the obvious question here is what exactly is he aiming for on the king side, Robert? The queen from c2 is in a perfect spot. It's lording over the entire board, and it's reinforcing the g2 pawn, which means even if Alexei shifts his queen from h4 and plays h5, h4, white's knight will just hop into f5, and there will be no clear follow-up. But for Shakir Mamedyarov, this is a golden opportunity to strike. Black still hasn't castled, so the big question is how does white conduct the initiative properly? Is it knight f5? Is it b4, b5? Is it rook a d1 to prepare a sack on d5? A lot of questions that Shak has to answer here, but it's obvious that he's in the driver's seat.
And we see Shak play the move rook a to d1. The engine still approving of white's position. And in these positions, I think it's tempting to just go all out, right? To play f5, e6 or something of that nature. But that's often the wrong decision. You want to bring all of your pieces into the game. And all right, now it's justified. The engine with a little bit more depth says that actually was a great move, Shakhriyar. And it prevents castling queenside, if I'm not mistaken, because if Black, in fact, does castle queenside, there's b4. And once the knight moves away, say to e6, then thank you very much for d5.
Look at that queen on c2. It's everywhere. It's everywhere at the same time. It's pinning the king. It's defending g2. And I'll tell you something else, Robert. I kind of jokingly mentioned the idea of knight takes d5, but the more I consider it, the more I realize that in the current game position, I think knight takes d5 is actually a huge threat, because after cd rook takes d5, Black's king is stranded in the center. It literally cannot castle kingside. You've already moved the rook, and it now can't castle queenside because the rook cuts off the d file. I think that scenario would be an absolute nightmare for Black. Would you co-sign that idea?
I absolutely do, because it opens up this diagonal as well. So if you get to kick the knight out of c5, this king on e8 is going to be quickly checkmated. So knight takes d5 is a threat. That might mean a move like rook d8 is necessary, but if that's your move, your king is not getting out of the center, and that means you are permanently going to be in danger.
And then I could lay on the pressure with knight f5, rook fu1, and knight d6 related ideas. Ugh. This is exactly what you don't want against Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. The guy is a wizard with the initiative.
And we have to give Mamedyarov a ton of credit. You and I have covered so many of his events, but you remember Mamedyarov old? There were times he just sacrificed pieces when it wouldn't work. He has shown tremendous restraint in recent years, playing moves like rook ad1 to set up the decisive attack rather than just going forward without the proper setup.
And he understands the importance of erring on the side of being a little bit more solid in a knockout tournament, which is exactly what he's doing here, showing restraint, showing full focus, good opening preparation, and he stands to win the first game unless Alexei Sarana can put together a heroic defense.
And he will need that and more right now, because Mamedyarov is ahead on the clock. He is a better king. His center is great. No, this is really bad for Sarana. So let's leave him to it. And why don't we go to the game between Jeffrey Xiong and Benjamin Bach, because that one has changed quite a bit, Danya, where in the current position, we see the last move play was f takes g5. So white is storming with the pawns. Black has stolen a pawn on c4, it would seem. So if we just go back a few moves, queen e1 was played, the knight dropped back, and here we go. White's pieces just come to the center, and the king side, give me that c4 pawn, says Benjamin Bach. But as is often the case in these positions, Danya, the attack is more meaningful than a single pawn.
Yeah, Jeffrey says, hey, I am more than happy to give you that pawn if you can allow me to open the G file, and there was nothing Benjamin could do about that. If you look at only the clocks, Robert, you would think this is an MVL game. Jeffrey Xiong is up 7 minutes on Benjamin, and the attack is only just beginning. The typical plan here is king h2 and rook g1. Let's not pretend that it's already checkmate. Black's queen on f7, a good defender. Black can slide the king to the corner, king h8 and rook g8. So it's not that Black lacks defensive possibilities. It's just that in the long run, White has so many attacking prospects that one way or another, I don't see Benjamin holding this forever.
And one other thing that he might not be able to hold is this d6 pawn. And if that one falls, that's the lever to his whole position. It protects c5 and e5, so you cannot afford to lose that base pawn. So how is he going to get that pawn? I'm not entirely sure just yet. But with the attack on the G file and with the pressure down the D file, that should give at least sufficient compensation in terms of Jeffrey's thinking. He doesn't know that the position is this much better for him. He's saying it's actually complicated. I've sacrificed something, but what I've gained is more than worth it.
Yeah, and I think the question he might be trying to address now isn't whether he wants a rook on the G file. It's how to get it there, because you've got the option of going rook f2 in order to keep the a2 pawn protected. If you play king h2, you at least have to reckon with bishop takes d3 and queen takes a2 check. Now, that's not too scary of a possibility, because that could be met with rook f2. But the mechanics of the attack, the logistics of how you get your pieces to the right squares are critically important. You can see Jeffrey deep in thought there. This is a pretty big decision.
And you mentioned MVL. Something that MVL was trying to do against Sam Sevian is just blitz the guy, right? Every single move, just throw it back to his clock. And Jeffrey is not doing that right now, because he senses that this is the key moment. And Jeffrey is locked in. Benjamin, much the same. But look at Jeffrey. Like, he's got that pose. He's got the the predator pose. I am about to
Got
strike.
the killer pose.
Mm-hmm.
No, he senses, he smells blood in this position. I think he understands that deciding and making sure that he positions his pieces in a smart way is going to be the difference between a failed attack and, checkmate in the next 10 moves.
Right. And so what do you think? What's he going to end up playing in this position? Because you mentioned rook f2, king h2, both are viable.
My intuition is screaming rook f2 for whatever reason. I think it's going to be one of the two moves, king h2 and rook f2. One thing I would probably not do, Robert, is f6. I think a lot of people would be very tempted with this move, but it has many problems. The primary one is that you're weakening the g6 square. And even if black just plays g6, who has benefited from the position locking up like that? It's black, because the g7 pawn is precisely the target that you want to keep in place so that you can attack it down the g file.
It's a great point. Rook f2 played, not 100% precise. Still, wow, that's a huge move.
And that is why it's not 100% precise. God, Benjamin had cooked that up.
Yeah, let's go back to the analysis board and figure out what was the better option here. Maybe it was taking on c4 right away. We didn't mention it in advance, but that does make some sense as well, because you drag the knight. The queen certainly doesn't want to leave this king alone.
No,
queen takes c4 doesn't look great.
Oh, and now you can't play d5.
You can't play d5. So you just sort of prevent black's only active plan.
And maybe now you go rook f2. Now we're chilling. And black can't even put a rook on d8 to prepare d5. So with no counterplay, white has the time and space necessary to set up the attacking formation. So maybe Jeffrey just slightly over-eager there, underestimating the counterplay. But hats off to Benjamin, striking precisely when he has the chance, not missing it. Can he follow up accurately, though?
He has with e4. Another great move, hitting this rook on d3. d5 can be captured later. f5 will also be loose. I am not sure whose position I prefer here. It's a toss-up.
So if white plays rook e3, I guess black plays knight takes d5 or rook e8. It is a mess. And if you're on the defending side of such a position, Robert, that is exactly what you want. You want a mess. You want to breathe some fear into your opponent's mind that maybe I'm the one getting attacked. And that's what Benjamin Bach is doing right now.
All right, well, let's leave him to it then. And he is catching up with the clock. But let's go to the Yonchis of Duda against Wang Hao game. That one is certainly changed, and it's getting better for Wang Hao. What is the material count? It's 2 bishops. And
I'm still counting.
2 bishops for a rook and 3 pawns. But I would say 2 bishops and an attack.
And he's just sacrificed one of those bishops. But if you take it, I think queen f4 creates a double mate threat on f2 and h2. And white has no meaningful checks. This one's over if you take on b7. What a move by Wang Hao. Rook c2? Are you kidding me?
The guy is feeling it right now. And how do you even survive this position for white? You can't easily, I don't think, block with a rook on e2. You'll have some back rank problems.
Are you sure? I actually thought rook e2 might be the way.
Is there bishop
but
c3
then maybe
there?
takes in queen h5.
What about bishop c3?
No, you didn't just do that.
Does it work?
You got to show that.
Oh, it doesn't work. No. My point, though, was because that
because if queen takes b7. Mm-hmm.
You have checkmate, and I've cut the queen off from e1. But of course, as you're saying, you can just take on b7. So
no, but the reason it doesn't work is beautiful. Queen b7, rook e2. Sorry to keep cutting you off. Queen c8 check. Yes. And queen takes c3. Isn't that nice?
It's beautiful geometry. The queen comes back and defends this rook, and that means that white is 3 pawns to the good. So rook e2 is possible, I guess, but there's queen h5 ideas in that position. So,
queen f4, and there's bishop a6 at the end, but then rook d3.
If this holds for white, it's a miracle, but we see the evaluation go to -6. And now Wang Hao, he's up in his chair. He's ready to land a decisive attack. So what our first instinct is to double attack f2 and h2, give up the rook, take on h2. We'll show this here. Queen c2, queen h2, king f1, bishop a6, but there's rook d3, so the king still gets to escape.
Yeah, and of course not rook e2. That blocks the escape square. Instead, Wang Hao already making his decision, and he just plays rook takes b2. Duda missed it. That's just a killer move. No need to sack anything.
Isn't it funny how when the eval bar goes to -6, we automatically assume there has to be some tactic, whereas it's just rook takes pawn next to the rook.
And now it's desperation time for JKD. He's trying to muddy the waters. Rook g3 is an excellent defensive move, but at the very least, queen d2. I think results in a double attack. White will have to move the queen, and then you can take on g3. And you've got 3 pawns on the king side, Robert. Any endgame is going to be completely winning for black.
There's another funny variation.
Rook takes g6.
Well, I was going to show this variation down here. Rook b3, rook g5, rook b5. Your rook's trapped. And I can...
Oh, my God. Rook g4, and what do you do?
Don't I have bishop... how do I trap? Bishop c8?
That rook is a weasel, though. Rook h4, and I guess even just like king g7.
Yeah, I could trap it this way as well. So, yeah, the rook is getting trapped over here, but there are a bunch of pawns for the piece. He does play your move, queen d2, with all of the threats at once. Jan Krzysztof Duda, the number 1 seed in his bracket, his side of the bracket in Group B, he's going down.
He's frustrated. This game is over. Rook takes g6 check might have been what he was relying on, but after the simple king h8, White runs out of checks. The queen from d2 guards h6, and White is at the very least going to be down 2 bishops.
Yeah, the king just steps aside, and that is that. That's a, you have a 1-move threat, a 1-move tactic. It won't pan out. So queen to e3 is played.
No, that's it.
This is just winning. You can even just trade queens.
And that's, I think, exactly what Wang Hao is going to do. Plenty of time on the clock. And I've seen these games be surprisingly hard to win, Robert, but with 3 pawns on one side of the board, that's more than enough meat on the bone.
And what Jan Krzysztof's going to do is try to put a pawn f3. And, well, down the line, this h-pawn could still be a winner. Matches the bishop and the corner over here. So that's very, very, very far down the line, but I just wanted to point that out. And here, the king is just running in.
I think you should put the bishop on e6 to avoid any shenanigans with the white e-pawn moving forward, and then it's infiltration time through those gaping weaknesses on the dark squares.
Oh, here comes that
Duda's going to
bishop
put his king on g3, but okay.
By the way, Wang Hao's speed has been very impressive.
It has. 2.5 minutes to convert this endgame.
If you reverse the times, then Jan Krzysztof has very good chances to hold, right? 1 minute for the side trying to win, but with 2 minutes and 20 seconds, I don't know about that move.
I don't like g5. It's very committal. He better have a follow-up in mind.
He wants to get his bishop to f1 at some point.
So maybe like bishop c8 or bishop d7. Yeah, but even if you tie down White's rook, even if White's rook just sits on the first rank, I once had an endgame just like this against Bu Shanji. I had a bishop and 2 pawns. He had a rook and 3 pawns, and I couldn't win, and it was insane. But these endgames can actually be very hard to win.
And with the evaluation at -2 and change, that actually leads me to believe that's very likely to be a fortress, right, Danya? Because if this were winning, that number would be pretty high. So -2.2 feels like we're getting close to fortress territory.
But this is what the top players do. They just literally pull these draws out of absolutely nowhere.
Going to happen. Mamedyarov has to give up one of those pawns, and maybe he can somehow hold. We've been talking about this dynamic in other games, in the Duda against Wang Hao game. But if he just drops a pawn over here, he's obviously the player who has to pray for a draw.
I don't see it happening. Maybe if he could magically evaporate all of the pawns from the queen side, he'd have more practical chances. But as it stands, White has an extra pawn, a queen that is running amok, weak pawns on a6 and c4. It is amazing, Robert, how everything at this level just hinges on one subtlety. The pawn was on h6 instead of h7, we would have a diametrically opposite result to the game. That is just what chess looks like at this level. And this is going to be a heartbreaking result for Shakir Mamedyarov, unless he can pull, a rabbit out of the hat here, which I just don't see happening. Plenty of time for Alexei. His technique is generally good. We'll keep an eye on this one, but I don't see this working out for Shak.
Yeah,
although
he has
bishop
chances.
d4 is a nice defensive move.
Well, I mean, it's hard to put percentages on these things, Danya. But what kind of chances would you say Mamedyarov has to hold?
It's hard to say. I'm wondering if White has some sort of way to win the bishop, because the +7 evaluation sounds crazy. I mean, I would probably evaluate it as 10% drawing chances. Like, I could totally see something crazy happening here. But, Alexei doesn't have a clear weakness in terms of his conversion.
I feel like I'm definitely being biased by the eval bar, because I look at this position and I'm actively trying to ignore it. And this doesn't look that easy for White. In fact, that move gave away a bunch of the advantage. So I think it's a long-term advantage for sure. But I could also see this game fizzling out. because with the bishop and the rook, maybe there's going to be a rook d2 at some moment. The b2 pawn is under attack. So you need to prove this if you are Alexei.
No, totally. Now, for example, queen c8, king h7, queen takes c4. Guess what? Black takes on b2. As long as black can keep the... Oh, but then queen b4.
Queen b4.
Or no, but bishop back to e5.
Maybe e5. Oh, was there e5 there?
Oh, and queen c2. But I guess then rook d2?
Oh, hanging on by a thread everywhere.
I think Alexei rushed just a little bit, but I guess he figures that black is just not going to be able to keep the rook stably on the 6th rank. And if black loses a6, is it safe to say that then the game is basically over?
Well, yes, I think that would be, hugely problematic. So e5, hitting the rook. If the bishop takes the pawn, we have queen e4 check. That's the whole point. And if the rook moves somewhere careless, queen c2 check is the problem. So where does the rook have to go to protect the bishop? Rook b6 or rook d2?
No, rook d2, king e1.
King e1, exactly. You just kick this rook off the 2nd rank, and then you're going to play queen c2 and win the bishop. So that means rook b6 is the last try here. And oh, gosh, you're just hitting black everywhere. This hurts.
And rook b5, a4. Like, you're literally not letting black breathe here.
Rook b4. Wishful thinking.
Takes f7.
Queen takes f7. Maybe even queen c5, and you can just keep attacking every turn.
That's the problem when you have no anchor squares for the rook, right? You need to anchor the rook, which then anchors the bishop. If the rook itself is undefended, the entire construction simply falls apart. It's a matter of time.
Well, what you're saying is black needs this. Bishop d4 and pawn e5, and then black is, pretty much...
Oh, and then put a rook on f6? You are chilling. But it's all about the tempi. Black just doesn't have that one tempo he needs to establish that defensive construction. In the meantime, I think Jan Krzysztof has won.
Exactly what I was going to say. You read my mind, partner. Jan Krzysztof Duda, he takes a lead against Wang Hao. He wins his game with the black pieces after that horrendous blunder from the Chinese grandmaster. So let's game between Bach and Jeffrey Xiong, just because I feel like Benjamin, he's not convincing me with his time management, that's for sure. And his play, it does feel like black is getting everything that he wants.
No, it feels like the nature of the position isn't changing too much. And if it is changing, it's changing in black's favor. But the clock most definitely is. It's dwindling for Benjamin. You're absolutely right. Jeffrey got the one thing that he wanted when he played a5, which is long-term pressure on the b2 pawn. That's now a liability. White now has to delegate at least one of the rooks to a rather passive square on c2. I think Benjamin is having a hard time deciding which one he should relegate.
And he might be thinking, can I go for this f7 pawn? You mentioned earlier, a knight e5 with a rook on c7 could be dangerous, or knight g5 in this particular position. I'm not sure I believe in that because b2 hangs in a3 as well.
Maybe.
But maybe not. Okay, he goes for it, but still hovering around even is that eval bar, which means that a mistake can happen any move.
Well, I thought that bishop d6 is a pretty unpleasant resource that white has to contend with because then you can't take on f7. I guess what you can do is rook d7, and perhaps a scenario that black wants to avoid is a trade of the dark square bishop for the knight on e5, because then the dark squares near white's king are going to give white long-term mating chances.
Right. For example, rook takes a7 already becomes a threat with rook c8 checkmate about to land. So that does not look very pleasant. Even though it's opposite colored bishops and black is up a pawn, your extra pawn is one of these two. So that's not a real extra pawn. Double pawns are pawns too. I know that, but it's not getting you a passer.
And so Jeffrey with a very important decision here. Knight takes f7. It's not the biggest threat in the world, but it's not something that you just want to allow for free.
Especially with that bishop still streaming into the e5 square. So if bishop takes a3, you can grab another pawn, but then your king is feeling awfully unsafe.
I think Jeffrey will take on a3. For some reason, I get the sense he's going to take on a3 and then drop the bishop back to f8 in order to cover the h6 square. What I'm having a hard time determining is how white sets up mating threats if the bishop sits on f8. Even if white's knight is on f7, where is the knight going from there? Or am I missing something obvious?
No, I don't think it's obvious. I just am so concerned about this king with like a knight f7, some kind of dark square infiltration. But you could be onto something because bishop a3, at least if Jeffrey needed to win this game, he would definitely make that move. But I don't know. I'm just worried. Knight h6 check idea. This bishop is going to go to one of these squares.
But again, bishop f8, what is even the ideal setup, right? In such positions, you want to come up with the target setup. I'm having a hard time seeing even the target setup for white. Maybe bishop f4 and knight h6. I don't know.
But I'm worried about just this.
That comes so fast. That's like a 2 tempi, and you're already promoting.
The more that we look at it, the more that Jeffrey thinks on it, bishop takes a3 just might be a good try.
I promise I wasn't paid by the Bishop Takes A3 Society. I feel like I'm lobbying for this move to be played. I just feel strongly that with 90 seconds on the clock, this is as good of a chance that as Jeffrey will have to win this game. If he wins this game, it's a 2-0 lead. He's basically got the match in the bag. I think it's a worthwhile risk to take on A3 here.
By the way, look at these players. They look like they could be cousins with their hands in this posture.
Look at that. Benjamin has the fingers on the forehead pose.
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey's got the classic hands overhead.
But Benjamin only has 1 minute and 34 seconds left. That is not a lot of time to calculate that kind of endgame after bishop takes a3.
It's interesting. I almost never have that pose when I'm playing online because my hand is always on the mouse because I'm always kind of ready to make a move. But Jeffrey, he's hunkering down. He's like, I'm not ready to make a move just yet. I'm going to calculate the heck out of this position before I make a decision.
I think he's taking on a3. The way I'm seeing him calculate here, the more time we have just to allow ourselves to consider all the possibilities, bishop takes a3 is more and more enticing.
It is. And at this point, it's a pretty big sunk cost. He spent like 3 minutes on it, but no. Showing restraint. Rook b7. What is he intending against knight takes f7? Could it be bishop takes a3 in that position?
It's interesting. There is knight h6 check. The king would have to go to f8.
Yep.
That doesn't look good. A swap on b7 with a rook c7 to follow. Maybe we'll show this just to put it on everyone's radar that if you take here, there's knight h6 check. You can't go to h8 because of bishop e5. But apparently, Donna, you are absolutely correct. I was looking at this position thinking that this king would be in trouble. h7 is hanging, all that kind of stuff. And then it says minus 3.1.
Well, I knew it was minus 3.1, so.
It might just be this check.
Yeah, and again, it's like there's no target construction. The bishop covering that diagonal. Instead, Benjamin, I think, has taken on f7, but Jeffrey responding with a rather cryptic move, rook a b8. I think he's trying to get all of the rooks off the board and basically saying, if we only had minor pieces on the board, Robert, that a3 pawn would be a death sentence for white.
Good move.
20 seconds.
No, how do you defend this position for Benjamin? Not that he needs to defend on the board, but it's a very complicated mess.
Yeah, and it's not one of those things where the game is going to fizzle out in the next couple of moves. This is going to stay complicated unless white finds some sort of perpetual check with the rook and the knight, as you're indicating.
Right. Knight h7, knight f6 could lead to checkmate if black's not careful.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think Jeffrey knows what's up. By the way, this rook can also take on h7 in plenty of positions because the b8 rook is under attack with his bishop lurking on g3.
Yet again, I'm having a hard time figuring out exactly what it is that Benjamin has in store against bishop takes a3.
That's going to be the end. Maybe rook c8.
Take it in king g7, and I run to h6 and h5.
Yeah, that's looking a little scary, but you have this rook on b7 at the end. That's so important to have a rook here covering the 7th rank.
Of course, it's so much easier to be brave when it's another person's king we're talking about.
Yeah, but I'm supporting your bravery. I just want you to know that I'm proud of you.
You're going to make me emotional, and that is the last thing we want in a professional commentary.
Well, Jeffrey, 2 minutes, 15 seconds. He's up 2 minutes on the clock. I could see him taking on a3, as you've been mentioning. I think he's just making sure his king doesn't get mated, because the last thing you want when you're up a full point is to take some unnecessary risk and pay the price.
No, that would be heartbreaking. I mean, a draw with black is an excellent result. Basically pushes Benjamin Buck against the wall. So you're right. And there's bishop takes a3. Jeffrey has ensured that there's no mate.
10 seconds. Benjamin, what are you doing? You got to move.
Such a confusing position. 5 seconds.
Has he forgot about the clock?
2 seconds.
Is he not looking at the clock? Make a move. Flag. Okay, he barely gets that move off. He is a great bullet player.
He sees it, but now the king runs to h5.
As you called, king h5, and there's no more attack. h6? Does that work?
h6 is a great move. E takes d5, h takes g5. If white's pawn was on h3, then rook h8 would be checkmate there.
Well, we're looking at moves like h6. You could probably just move your bishop. That looks plenty good. Oh.
f3 is an excellent move, I thought.
He wants checkmate.
Okay, maybe, bishop e7. And just push, close your eyes and push.
That's winning. Bishop e7 is a great move. You cannot take with the pawn, everybody. Rook h8 would be checkmate, so do not get mated on the side of the board. But bishop e7 is not just a one-move attack. It allows the a-pawn to rumble forward and then become a queen.
Phenomenal time management by Jeffrey. This is where those extra 30 seconds, Benjamin would kill for an extra 30 seconds in this position.
And Jeffrey, he's using the clock wisely. He's using a weapon, but he's also making sure that he does not rush and thus blunder away what is a winning advantage. So Benjamin, he doesn't look very happy. He shouldn't be happy. Jeffrey, he's really calculating, eyes darting across the board here. And will he find bishop retreat to e7?
I think what's helping him is the fact that there just aren't that many alternatives. You know you want to push the a-pawn, so moving the dark-squared bishop away just makes logical sense.
Oh, and both sides making mistakes.
I think rook takes c4 and rook takes a4 won the pawn.
It did. King g2, bishop f1. And whose king's getting mated?
I think it's knight takes c6, knight g7 is a threat, but rook g2 will result in checkmate.
Oh my gosh.
He's going to lose.
Rook g2 and h takes g5.
There's also bishop d6, but somehow white's king escapes to e4 there.
Check, and even rook takes g5, right?
I think that's the simplest. Black's king is perfectly safe. Jeffrey has to see the forest for the trees here.
Rook takes g5 is a free piece. Jeffrey takes it. And,
That's
unfortunately for Benjamin Bach, this one is about to be over.
Just move the dark-squared bishop away. Really, anything is good. You're up a piece, for God's sake.
Bishop c4.
20 seconds, though.
Jeffrey's such a good bullet player. Not too worried about him. Rook f5, take on f3 is about to happen.
Last ditch chance, rook f5. Yeah, you're exactly right. Rook f5, rook takes f3, eliminate the bishop, and that is all she wrote.
It's very important to take with the rook and get this bishop out of here. Whoa.
Just don't go g4.
Get checkmated in one. That's not a good decision. How about now bishop e7?
Bishop e7, absolutely.
Or bishop f8.
5 seconds, though.
Jeffrey, got to go. He does take. His king can run away.
It's still scary. Benjamin doing a great job of staying afloat.
Yeah,
but
two passed pawns in the center now.
Rook a6, trying to eliminate more pawns.
What? Bishop c1, here it comes. Bishop c1 still. Or bishop b4 check also.
But after king e2, the rook is going to hang.
But there's bishop c4 check if the king was on e2.
I would have just gone a3, but this is also perfectly sufficient.
And the h-pawn's unstoppable.
Too many passers. Yeah, the bishop controls c7.
Wow, Jeffrey Xiong takes game 2 as well. Just quickly to show you that moment, bishop c4 check. He realized that the rook c4 or hg5, this position would not be worse for black. You see the eval bar say zeros. Black's actually up a pawn at the start. So Jeffrey, with the lead in the match, he plays it safe, and it pays off because Benjamin didn't have time. But let's go to the game between Sarana and Mamedyarov. Look at this evaluation, Danya. It says zeros.
You called
Black is just going to do this, or if the queen attacks the rook, the king is going to come to g7. This position is a draw by position, but look at the clock. Could be used as a weapon.
Well, if the clock, you like to say, if the clock situation were reversed, then I think Sarana would have better winning chances. I stand corrected. Shakir Mamedyarov somehow building up a fortress. And here's the problem, Robert. Queen d8, there's always king g7. There's always going to be king g7 to protect the rook.
What? Take it!
Take it, bishop c4.
Take it! And bishop a7! That is a huge blunder. And Mamedyarov is going to win this game? And you see Sarana's face?
Oh my
You can't believe it.
King c6 maybe last, no, but then just a5.
Oh my gosh.
He resigns.
He is in disbelief. What did he do?
Look at his face. He can't believe this is real. He forgot the bishop can stop the pawn from a7.
He's beside himself. You got to feel for the guy. Alexei
Oh
Sarana
my goodness.
was winning in this game. And then we tuned back in. It was a fortress. It was a draw. There was no way to keep that king out of g7 while attacking the rook on f6. But this was not the way to do it. Let's go back just a few moves here. This was the issue. you can't keep control of g7 while attacking f6. So as soon as the queen attacks the rook, the king comes back. But Danya, queen b6?
But Robert, the crazy thing is that this move has no point. This move has it doesn't carry a threat. Even if black can't take on b6, you can just play bishop d4. So there's just no point in playing with fire like this. You've got 3 seconds. Just a boneheaded decision here for Alexei Sarana. You feel for the guy. It happens. But Shakir Mamedyarov, talk about by hook or by crook. How is this match at 1-1?
Well, the first game, it looked like he was actually going to take that full point initially. And time trouble has told the tale of today's scores, Danya, because in game 1, Mamedyarov couldn't handle himself in time trouble. Here in game 2, sure, objectively, this result should never have been in doubt. It should have at least been a draw for Sarana. But time trouble is the bane of a chess player's existence.
It is indeed, and we need a couple of moments to process what we just saw. All of these matches are still in play. Benjamin Buck needs to put together 2 consecutive wins to become the first person to come back from a 2-0 lead to force Armageddon. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be epic. We've got 2 more games remaining, and you are going absolutely nowhere. You're watching the Chess.com Global Championship. We will be back with Game 3 of these amazing matches on the other side of this sharp break.
open to anyone, all around the world.
Holy smokes!
The Chess.com Global Championship offers the dream of playing against the best.
Whoa!
And hey, have we mentioned there's also $1 million at stake?
The total pot is $1 million.
No, that is not a typo. The prizes are unbelievably generous.
We began with thousands of players. Now only dozens remain.
Why is he even moving?
Do
Just go.
something.
Wow.
Lost on time.
Wesley So makes it through 3-0.
The CGC knockout phase has arrived. There are those who played their way in, and some are here thanks to their well-earned reputations. No matter who you are, things are about to get very, very real.
Leonard Dominguez, he moves on to the round of 16.
A trip to the CGC finals and a clean shot at the largest first-place prize of the year. My friends, it's the CGC round of 32. Who will take the next step to Toronto?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Chess.com Global Championship. Daniel Naroditsky and Robert Hess bringing you the coverage. We are looking at the disappointed, devastated face of Grandmaster Alexei Sarana, who not only failed to win and convert a winning position, but shockingly blundered at the last second to lose it and allow Shakir Mamedyarov to equalize the score at 1 point apiece. Robert, I'm still processing what happened there, and I think so are the players.
Yeah, it seemed impossible, right, to lose that position. Nobody puts a bishop in the corner like Mamedyarov with that bishop on a1. It sneakily had to track back to cover the passed b pawn, and when all was said and done, Mamedyarov ended up a bishop ahead with the win, and now a tied match.
And what is at stake here? We would not be exaggerating to say that there are literally thousands, tens of thousands of dollars at stake with every game that you fail to convert. You can see that 17th to 32nd place is $10,000. You get an additional $5,000 for making your way to the final 16. But Robert, it's not just those $5,000. It's the possibility of getting one of those top 5 prizes and maybe getting the top prize of $200,000. That's what's at stake.
It's huge. I mean, it's also something that, when you do so well in some of these tournaments, people start recognizing you. That could pay off in other ways as well. But for Alexei Sarana, I don't know how you put that game behind you. That is devastating. It's not like he was getting outplayed. He should hold a draw. He blundered. No, he was winning. He could have pretty much ended this match. And then Queen B6. That is the blunder heard around the world.
And speaking of turnarounds, Wang Hao was off to an amazing start against JKD. We were sure he was going to win the first game with black. Instead, he is staring down the barrel of a 0.5 to 1.5 lead. He has the black pieces. And will we see a repeat of the line from game 1? We see a repeat of the overall variation, but Wang Hao deviating with knight f6.
That's right. We saw that pawn on e5. He snagged a pawn in the center. This game, not the same. d5 here. After e5, there's knight hopping into e4. This is standard opening fair. And for Wang Hao, I think he wants to avoid his opponent's preparation. But if you're Jan Krzysztof Duda, you're pretty happy about this initial setup. You're up a point in the match. Okay, if your opponent makes a draw here, so be it. But it's not like it's a tactical affair.
No, this is a super solid variation. And as far as I know, white is supposed to be slightly better. This bishop e3 move has been played by Magnus and by Wesley. And the idea is basically to develop the b1 knight to d2, or sometimes to c3. But that pawn on c6 is a long-term weakness for black. The bishop on g7 is, well, let's not talk about the bishop on g7. And even if black plays the sort of typical f7, f6, it's not like that solves all of black's problems. White can just kind of ignore that pawn. And sometimes f6 actually creates more weaknesses than it fixes.
That's true. And we see that Wang Hao, he's taking a bit of a think here. f6 looks like a very decent move. You can use the semi-open b file to your benefit, bringing out your rook to b8 or even your queen to b6. But this bishop on c8, that is one half of the bishop pair, but it's an unopposed piece on the light squares. There's no light square bishop for white, but it has no good diagonal. If you go to a6, you're staring to
Alexa, not right now. It's time to stretch, apparently.
Well, it's time for Jan Krzysztof Duda to develop a new stretch. That's very funny. Alexa always knowing when to participate in the show.
Queen c1, Duda participating in the Let's Defend the B2 pawn show with Queen C1. He seems to be, at least if the time usage is any indicator, a little bit more comfortable in this position than Wang Hao. Maybe Wang Hao's decision to deviate from E5 was a somewhat emotional one, just wanting to get a fresh position. But this is going to be a very, very difficult game for Wang Hao to win. This is one of the most solid variations. I mean, White has no weaknesses to speak of. Duda's all good.
Yeah, and I think if you're Wang Hao, you just need to hold this game and then put all on the line in game 4. And don't play some kind of symmetrical position. Don't try to play for a 0.2 advantage and hope you squeeze. You're going to need to go deep into your repertoire. Find that variation that you've been hiding in your files, as a one-off, and try to use that to win. But here in the black pieces, Danya, gosh, that C6 pawn is such a long-term weakness.
No, I don't want to be a backseat general here. It's way too early to tell, but I just don't see Wang Hao pulling this game off. Obviously, if he loses this game, he loses the match. So a draw is not the end of the world. He probably wouldn't mind having the white pieces in a must-win scenario. That is not, the worst possible outcome, but it's a tall order. It's a very, very tall order.
Yeah, I don't envy the task. Trying to beat Jan Krzysztof Duda on demand. Please, no, somebody else. And you see the move Knight F to D2. And I love that decision. So for all the people who are watching, who are students of the game, develop your pieces. Get your rooks connected. But if you are Jan Krzysztof Duda, the reason why he brought let's bring up an analysis board here quickly, because I think it's important to show, is that he brought his knight on F3 back so that in the event of a knight capture on E4, you don't lose a tempo as your knight on F3 is no longer under attack. So he can bring both of his knights into the game. Only one knight remains. But now he can just go queen C3, rook C1, and go after the C6 pawn, the C file.
In the long run, he is going to have to solve the problem of the knight on D2. That is why Wang Hao put his pawn on A4, to prevent that knight from occupying a dream blockading square on C5. But it's not like he has to do that with any sense of urgency. The position is solid. The knight can chill on D2 for the time being. So I think you're right. Queen C3, rook C1, if necessary, B2, B3, although that's not a move you want to make unless the B2 pawn is actually under attack. That's how the game is going to unfold.
And after B3, A takes, knight takes B3 is a common response so that you can start pushing this A pawn as an outside passer. So bishop F5, no rook B1 for you. So when I play rook B8, you're going to have to push that pawn. But I like the look of rook E to C1.
Another idea I've seen in these positions, players often play the move H3 just at some point, not necessarily because they want to play G4, although G4 is an absolutely viable idea. And speaking of H3, did you just play that move or did Duda?
Duda played it.
Nice.
You called it. And it makes a lot of sense.
Rumming in everyone's faces that I predicted the move.
Well, the bishop has to move away from the diagonal, which means you get rook b1. And it's not like White's king is going to be checkmated just because you played g4. Black has no attacking pieces. White will have plenty of time to defend. So the other games are also starting. b3 was played. Can't really blame Duda for making solid choices when he's up a point in the match. So which would you prefer to start with? Jeffrey against Benjamin, or
I think
Shahryar against Alexei?
Jeffrey's game has a little bit more meat on the bone, and I'm totally unbiased because I don't really play this opening for either side. So what can I say? No comment.
Do we think takes and queen trade?
I don't think that's Jeffrey's style. I think Jeffrey is going to play principled. He's going to castle, and he's going to try to punish Benjamin for playing this terrible opening.
Well, that's the thing. When you only need a draw and you win the match with this half point, you're so tempted to just trade queens.
That's true.
It doesn't mean the game immediately fizzles out. There will still be chances to muddy the waters, but taking on e5 would be very tempting to me here.
If I'm totally honest with you, I forgot for a second that he was up 2 points. I assumed it was 1.5, but no, Benjamin is down 2 whole points. That changes my perspective. And you can sense the wheels turning right now, Robert, in Jeffrey's head. This is exactly what he's thinking. Do I take on e5 or do I play my preparation and I go for the main line? And you can also castle and take on e5 on the next move, by the way.
You can. I want to give a quick shout out to Levi Rosman, who's been commenting the Chess.com Global Championship along with us. Thank you for the raid. Hope all of the viewers who are joining here had a great time at his stream, and welcome to ours, because this is the third round of today's action. We are in the round of 32 in the bracket. Players are being eliminated left and right. And, well, if you are watching this online, you probably know Benjamin Bach. His streaming career is blossoming, but right now his chances in this tournament may be coming to an end.
Yeah, I mean, beating Jeffrey on demand right now with the black pieces is a ridiculously tall order. And the most depressing thing is that if you pull off the unimaginable, you win this game, you have to repeat the exact same thing in the next game. That is why nobody has surmounted a 2-point lead in the CGC thus far. Will Benjamin be the first? Well, doesn't seem too likely at the current moment. And you were absolutely right. D takes C5 after a 2-minute think. Very prudent decision by Jeffrey. He should not lose this game.
And now he's thinking about step 2. And queen takes d8. The problem is, I think that if we talk about this kind of a higher level situation, that there's these pawns on c4 and e4. So the d4 square is vulnerable. Black can always cover d5 with c6. But without the queens on the board, looking like we're getting closer and closer to a position where we can split the half point, or the full point, half point each. But I like the decision not to trade Danya, because we're keeping the tension. And where's this queen going? The e7?
Yeah, queen e7, knight d5 always is such an unpleasant idea. Queen e8, I've seen players try before as a way to avoid the queen trade, but look at how awkward that is. That squeezes in the rook on f8. White has the move c4, c5, opening up pressure on the knight on a6. You can't force it here. You're going to have to acquiesce to the queen trade, and I just don't see Benj. Okay, queen e7 is on the board, but knight d5 is just automatic here, and white is better.
Right. You just can take with a c pawn, open up a diagonal. This is just very nice for Jeffrey. You can't blame Benjamin, because he's trying to keep the queens on the board and keep winning chances alive, but that also makes your position worse often when you do this. So, yeah, this is just very, very nice for Jeffrey. So I think we'll come back to this one, if that's okay with you, partner, and maybe we should check in on the Shakir Mamedyarov game against Alexei Sarana.
It most certainly is. Let's take a look at it. So we had a queen's game of decline. The center has opened up. We've got kind of an unusual position, which of course could fizzle out if we have a bunch of minor piece trades in the center. How exactly did this happen? Let's debrief. So there was a classic QGD. Old school. This is like Capablanca era old school QGD.
And then there it is, that c5 push. Let's challenge for the center. And then when the dust is settled in the middle of the board, black has these active knights. White has the queen developed. The bishops are staring at each other. After it takes on e7, I assume queen takes. You can give black this isolated pawn, but Alexei Sarana is not scared of having an IQP.
No, and I think the general consensus, Robert, has actually shifted on IQP positions. I think modern engines actually, okay, at all times in history, we understood that if the side with the IQP controls the square in front of it, then you're doing well. But recently, it sort of turned out that even if white controls the square in front of the IQP, black is actually incredibly solid. You don't necessarily need a great deal of activity to hold the balance of that position. I don't know if you're sort of, you've noticed the same trend, but I've noticed a lot more players going for positions where they basically yield the square in front of the IQP and say, I'm totally solid. My IQP is perfectly well defended.
And I'm totally with you. I have indeed noticed that many of the top players are willing to take on that pawn, because when you have an isolated queen pawn, that's what IQP stands for, that means this pawn would get to d5 at some point. You have open files. Isolated pawn means that there are no pawns in adjacent files, which means they're open for rooks to use, the C and the E files. And white is underdeveloped. So if we see a series of trades, first on e7, then on d5, black will have this knight on c5, nice and active. The queen will be on e7, well positioned. Black can castle. And then, very importantly, this pawn on e6 is entombing this bishop, right? It can't get out. As soon as this pawn is gone, the bishop has a diagonal to work with.
I think what Shakir is contemplating is whether to throw in a check on b5. And he's trying to figure out the impact that has on the development of the game. It's a very messy position after bishop b5, bishop d7. There are three minor pieces, all of which could be captured, and all of which have the potential to lead to a different type of position.
Wow. Yeah, I do not feel any jealousy towards these players trying to figure this out. I feel like I'm learning opening theory as we watch. The eval bar is hovering at 0 even position, but there's so much more underneath that. It's not just a dead draw. Of course not. There's so much life left here. And Sarana, he looks like somebody who has calmed down from that game 2 blunder.
Yeah, he is not in the best of humors, as they used to say. He is not in a friendly mood, but I like what he's done. He's already taken 2 minutes, which tells me that he's not tilted. He's not playing instantly. He's taking his time, balancing himself out. And I think he's playing the exact kind of opening you need to play if he just had a disappointing result. Solid, the system, and relatively easy to play for black.
And we see knight takes d5 has been played first here by Mamedyarov. And let's go back to maybe our game between Duda and Wang Hao, because that one started first. We're deeper into that game. And look at this position between these players. The C pawn is gone. White is 2 pawns ahead over here. Black obviously looking to start stealing A pawns. But Danya, I got to like this for White.
This is a 2-result game. Let's be real. In the best case scenario, if Black eliminates both of White's A pawns, congratulations, you managed to make a draw. Now, really long term, right? This is a little bit too long term. Look at that pawn on f7. Could you envision a scenario in an endgame where White gets a rook to the 7th and a knight to g5? That might even be worth paying 2 A pawns for.
I would pay that and more. I'll give you my H pawn as well. I'll keep giving you
I'll
pawns.
give you my commentary spot. I'll give you my kingdom and a horse. But knight b3, Duda taking a different path.
I don't know about the horse. I'll give you everything else. I need that horse to go to g5. So please don't give away my horse, Danya. But queen takes a4. Smooth. Thanks, buddy. Queen a4, offering a queen trade. The knight can even just go to c5, and White is never, ever, ever losing that position.
No, this is exactly the way you want to play if you're up a point. Solid, not too much risk. Knight d7 and knight f6.
Oh, my God.
I feel like Wang Hao is tilting. G4 almost traps the bishop. It does have the e4 square.
Yeah, it gets away.
Or d3.
But a2 is not hanging, right? Because there's rook c8 at the end.
You want to hear something crazy? If you play g4, you actually might create mate threats down the h file. So perhaps after g4, Black shouldn't take on g4 because there's this idea of like king h2, rook h1, and those mate threats happen really fast. Forget everything I said. Duda takes a completely different route.
Well, you were correct that there were mate threats. Knight f6 was probably a good move. But when you're up a point in a match and Wang Hao has not proven an opening advantage from the white side, maybe he feels like I don't know how he keeps this pawn. Actually, is
bishop g5 maybe?
Ooh, speaking of mate threats, let's show that.
No, he wants a different type of mate threat.
Yeah, we're going to show this right now. Is a very nice mating pattern on the dark squares. Bishop g5. Oops. We trade rooks, even material, obstacle bishops draw, except for the fact that, and then no matter where the king goes in the h-file, rook h8 with his bishop is mate, and that would devastate. So I think that Wang Hao, after bishop g5, which is like a very natural move,
rook a4 maybe.
I'm almost wondering if you don't actually need to play bishop g5. Let's make a random move, like rook c5, right? And you take. I don't think you get away with this because I still have this check, and if you go to e7, I check you and go rook f8, and I win f7.
You win f7. Now, maybe Black could argue that the other pawns are going to be well defended by the bishop, but I agree. I mean, all of this is miserable.
Right, and I don't think you can go there because you get mated again. So,
wow.
It looks like bishop g5 can be withheld, so maybe there's a useful move, like a king h2, something of that nature, but I don't know. Maybe there's just no other choice but bishop g5.
Well, a rook c7 maybe. I mean, this I agree that this is kind of a threat is stronger than the execution kind of situation. Bishop g5, though, is on the board, and that was exactly my concern, Robert. Rook a4 hitting the pawn on d4, and I don't see a convenient way for White to defend it. You do not want to play rook d1, but Duda going full steam ahead saying, I don't care about that pawn. I care about checkmate, and I care about my a pawn. Does he want
that looks like checkmate.
What does he want after rook takes d4?
Is rook c1 out of the question?
It's crazy that Black's king is essentially checkmated.
This is
coming out of nowhere.
I think you would have to take and then bring your rook right back to c4 and go down to pawn in the endgame. So no matter what, it does appear that Duda is going to keep an extra pawn, and Wang Hao he's done well on the clock thus far in this game, so he does have time to start calculating here. Gosh, what move would you play? Would you take on d4, you think, Danya?
I'd be miserable, but I don't see an alternative. You might as well suffer for a pawn. But I agree. Rook takes d4, rook ac1. I think rook c4 is literally forced, and you're gonna be groveling for the rest of the game.
And I think with the dark squares being so weak and under white's control with all these mating nets, no, I don't think this is what you want. And here, rook d4 has been played. a4, as you mentioned, also possible. So let's consider that one too.
But rook ac1 would be consistent with Duda's strategy this game, which is to take sort of minimal risk, to keep the foot on the gas pedal, but not even to risk an inkling of a possibility that you might be playing for 3 results. Although even after a4, I think white is completely playing for 2 results. I mean, it's not like black is promoting the d-pawn anytime soon.
No. So
Duda going to spend some time on that.
And he plays rook c1, which keeps the advantage of +1. He's just going to have an extra pawn. That's how this game is going. So if all of the rooks get traded, we're going to remove the d5 pawn in our minds because rook c4 looks like the move to play at the moment. But if the rooks get traded, all of them, is that immediately a draw? Because to my eyes, it looks like it, but I just wanted to verify with you.
I would not be totally confident because in the opposite colored bishop endgame, white would have the idea of essentially putting the king on f6, dragging the pawn up to a5, and trying to overextend black's pieces in such a way that black is forced to give up f7. My inclination is to say that it's a draw, Robert, but even what this shows is how miserable black's defensive task is. It's like, even in the ideal scenario, it's still not going to be easy.
I'm with you. No, I don't want to play this from the black side. That's why I'm suggesting moves for Duda and hoping that you'll find good moves for Wang Hao. I think I've not been hiding my intentions here.
I will do no such thing, sir.
Okay, well, at least you called me sir. The respect is there. And whoa, I think we need to head on over to the game between Mamedyarov and Sarana because you're not going to believe what's happened there. What is this?
What is happening? There's a bishop on h4, a queen on a7. It's like there's been an explosion on the board, and there's debris scattered across both flanks.
And it says it's better for black, but I guess there's like a rook c2 happening at some point.
Listen, black needs to do something on this move because white is about to play knight f3 and castles, and that will get very serious for black. Being a pawn down with nothing to show for it and white's king safely tucked away on the king side is not acceptable. So maybe a sack on f2, maybe rook c2, but Alexi's going to make one of those moves.
Yeah, is there also perhaps a kind of queen g4? I don't think it necessarily works now. You're dropping a lot of pawns over here, but
how about queen g4, queen takes b7, just castle short?
Yeah, let's show that. Let's bring up an analysis. Queen b5 was played just to make sure that this king is not castling anytime soon. Queen b4 check. Queen takes b2. But what Donnie and I were talking about is if queen g4 over here and queen takes b7, just castle because now our rook is defended by the other rook, and that means that the queen on g4 can take g2 next. If you start taking all the pawns, you're just going to lose the game. As you see, the evaluation is out of control. Rook d8, queen b4 check after, and this king is being hunted.
Yeah, bishop takes f2, but Alexei taking a slightly different path, using the other flank to generate activity. Queen b5, of course, covers the f1 square and prevents white's king from castling. So the big question, the principled move here, of course, is knight f3. What is it that Alexei is intending against knight f3? Is it rook c2, or is it something else?
Yeah.
Is it bishop takes f2?
I don't think that works. Yeah, but we always have to consider the sacrifice, dragging the white king out into the open. But a knight f3... Can I even just retreat my bishop? Is that terrible of a move?
Not at all. And I think that might be precisely why he put the queen on b5, so that he can do that and not have to worry about white castling. Actually, white can end up in serious trouble there. Can't he?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, this is a position where if your king is stuck in the center, b2 is loose, the open c file. Black, if you just break the position down, like kind of piece by piece, not to hit you with a Kelly Clarkson lyric, but I think that black will be the one who's happy to dissect the position and look across the board.
I think Chakra might have to make an executive decision and play something like knight f3, bishop f6, knight d4, give up the b2 pawn, but castle at all costs. With 5 minutes on the clock, I don't see him surviving a prolonged period of staying in the center and having to deal with tons of threats by Black's thirsty, hungry pieces.
I just don't think you can even get away with castling, right? Because knight f3, the bishop hops back, and if your knight d4, it's a queen b4 check first.
You're not even going to let me.
No, I don't want you to castle your king. Definitely not. And queen d4, which is the best move. We see that the evo stays at zeros, hits the bishop on h4, hits the pawn on d5, protects the pawn on b2, stops queen b4 check. Yeah, that looks like a good decision.
Does this move do anything? Does this have actual purpose?
No, I just made that all up.
No, queen d4 is an excellent move going after the d5 pawn. And I have a feeling that this is going to fizzle out into a draw. I'm totally not influenced by the yield bar, I promise. Not at all. I think it just seems like, yeah.
What you're going to say is like there could be like mass liquidation at some point where we just get into an end game.
Exactly.
I could see that happening for sure. So let's leave these players to dwell on this position. It is still a very complicated game. And why don't we go to Jeffrey and Benjamin, because Jeffrey is quote unquote down a pawn, but I don't think he's unhappy about that fact.
Not at all. Just look at Black's queenside pawn structure. Look at the King's Indian bishop on g7, hemmed in as it is by the pawns on f6 and e5. Robert, one of the main litmus tests for whether Black's position holds water in the King's Indian is how close you are to pushing the pawn to f5. Here, Jeffrey could allow f5, and as I like to say, that's like pinching a dinosaur. What does that even do? Why doesn't it have to react to that at all? Instead, Jeffrey can continue accumulating the pressure in the center and on the queen side. Okay, the eval bar has dropped to almost equality, but in my King's Indian estimation, Black's position is kind of miserable here.
Yeah, pinching a dinosaur does sound kind of fun, though. So every time you say it, I'm like, what would that experience be like?
Except that'll be the last thing you do.
But what if the dinosaur's too big to find me? I can just run around and it can't move its head quickly enough.
Oh, yeah, it can't drop its head down to see you.
No, but
you're 7 feet tall. It will see you.
I'm not I'm not going after like a velociraptor. Those things are just freaky. But anyway, that's a thing of the past. We're not going back to the Jurassic era. So let's see what the deal is. Rook fd1, rook c1, queen c4, all of White's pieces working together harmoniously. If this bishop were to go to b7 to protect this pawn c6, this knight can go into c5. A rook can slam down on d7. I don't see a plan for Black.
And the plan for White is just to play queen takes c6, to play knight c5. White has a million improving moves. Maybe queen takes c6 should be accompanied by that sound effect you like to make. The enjoying food sound effect.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a good decision by Benjamin, though. He's trying to keep his extra pawn. And, of course, he's trying to contest the d-file. The ideal scenario for Black is that he gets the light-scored bishop out, puts it on e6, and eventually maybe generates some counterplay with f5.
Can we talk about move rook d2?
That is a professional move right there.
That is exactly the word I was going to use. Rook d2. A lot of people would I'm going to trade pieces. I need to draw. Oh, I'm going to move my rook so we don't trade. He goes rook d2. It's like, all right, you want to bring my knight over to d2? Do you see it's a linear move?
No, it's a collinear move. I think the actual definition, it is also a linear move. I mean, I'm sure it's what Dominguez would have played here.
Also,
we can ask him right now.
While we're talking about happy birthday, Linear. It's Linear Dominguez's birthday. He won his match yesterday. He has moved into the round of 16, but it also is his birthday. So everybody in chat, please wish him well.
I know we're both big fans of Linear Dominguez. He is such a class act, such an amazing player. And I'm positive he would have played rook d2, but a collinear move is when two pieces are staring at each other and you make a move that's on the same file, but without actually capturing the opponent's piece. So rook d7 would also be a collinear move. It also wouldn't happen to be a very good move, but that is the definition. And these moves are never that easy to find, Robert, because as you pointed out, you always have the instinct, either I take on d8 or I move away from the d file. Players often forget that there is a middle ground.
For sure. And rook d2, a lovely move from Jeffrey. He doesn't mind certain trades, as you've been mentioning, this horrible King's Indian bishop on g7, c6 is loose, knight coming to c5. I don't see really any hope for Benjamin in this game. There's just no winning chances, not a single weakness in White's position. White is a pawn down, but positionally is much better.
I mean, Jeffrey has played a fantastic match from the time management perspective, from the opening preparation perspective. Benjamin has done his best, but his best has just not been good enough. And as his clock dwindles, so do his chances of pulling a miracle win in this game and a miracle comeback in the match.
Well, another player whose chances might be out the window after this game is Wang Hao. Let's go back to that game. It's the one that started first here. Duda may be down on the clock, but his king is marching in, and the F7 pawn is a problem. Done. You saw this coming a mile away. I was asking without rooks on the board, because then the king could just sit on e8. But with rooks on the board, it's just so much worse for black.
No, with rooks on the board, the game is basically over because you play king f6. You can park your rook on b2, totally immobilizing black's rook, making it stay on the 8th rank. Duda takes a slower approach, bishop b4. I wonder if he's trying to play g4?
At some point, I imagine
I don't know why he didn't go king f6, though.
He wants that outside pass pawn, because if you have to take on g4 like this, then we get h5, h6, h7, and so on. So that's not going to be easy to meet. King f6, of course, is an option. How does he get this rook in the game? It should have been on b2, like you suggested.
Wang Hao has serious chances to draw this game. Duda drops below a minute. This is giving me shades of the first game, where, of course, Wang Hao is now on the defensive side. But if he can stay in the game, if he can avoid blundering the f7 pawn, avoid giving white another passer on the king side, he's going to force Duda to work for this.
And a4. Duda says, all right, well, you're going to try to stop me on the king side. Don't forget, I have this queen side passer.
Yeah,
and this one's just going to march up the board.
Rook c4, there's rook b2. Jan Shistov has to avoid losing the a pawn, obviously. How does he do that? King f6, a5 looks good.
I think he's just winning. I think that black is stretched all across the board and can't protect everything. The f7 pawn is going to be a target. The rook b2 idea with bishop d6 and rook b8 check. I think that's just a winning strategy that you cannot possibly stop.
Just don't play a6 prematurely. For unnamed reasons.
Yeah, you don't want to drop that pawn, that's for sure. Bishop d6.
But maybe now you can even sack the pawn. You can go rook b2 as you're indicating rook b8, rook f8. And the f7 pawn is the linchpin of black's entire kingside structure. Once that pawn is gone, boop, boop, king takes g6, takes h5, everything evaporates.
Well,
and collapses.
Duda's time is evaporating, but he was going rook c8, so he can play rook c7 afterwards. This is actually very smart move sequence with king f6 to follow.
Oh,
it's
rook
not
c7,
just about the f7
you're absolutely right.
It's mate. It's like it's a mating net as well.
This is just phenomenal filigree precision from Duda as he grabs the pawn on f7. Rook a2, last chance by Wang Hao. Can he get to that g pawn? Your answer is no.
g4 is
g2.
played.
Oh, rook g2, rook f4?
Protecting everything at once?
Rook f2.
Rook f2. Can you just start taking things?
Just king g6, bishop takes f3. Don't play g takes h5.
That would be such a bad blunder, because a bishop takes back and then you lose your rook.
Instead, Robert, I think g5 is winning, because even though black can trade the rooks, it is a small relief because the g-pawn promotes easily. The black king is shut off from the king side.
That is correct. So Wang Hao, great player. I'm glad to see him back in action. It's really nice that he's playing chess once again after his retirement. So we're going to see more from him, but I don't think we're going to see more from him in this tournament. Maybe just a few more moves.
Yeah, he can take solace in the fact that this match, it could have gone differently. If he won that first game, it would be Jan Krzysztof Duda very likely in the situation that Wang Hao finds himself in. But this game not totally over just yet. What a move! What a move!
That's sick. Seeing tactics everywhere. 10 seconds
everything
on the clock for Duda, by the way.
Look at that focus. He is locked in. He knows he is about to bag this match with a couple more accurate moves. H5 and rook f4 is coming. Black's not getting to either of these pawns.
And he's going to bag at minimum $5 more $1,000 and a chance to make it through to Toronto. He wins the game. He wins the match. Jan Krzysztof Duda, the Polish superstar, he makes his way through to the round of 16.
That was incredible. I mean, that was just exquisite technique. The way that he squeezed out that extra pawn, using his time so well. A great match by Jan Krzysztof Duda as he wins. They won't play the last round. Shakir Mamedyarov and Alexei Sarana locked in a rook endgame.
And white is a pawn ahead, but watch out. If this black king enters, black could even win this endgame. So don't just count material. Look at the dynamics on the board. And this one is looking like rook d2 is next, so the white king will venture back.
And I think it's going to be a draw. That pawn on g4, Robert, is worth its weight in gold. It is holding down 3 of white's pawns. And as you're pointing out, rook h5 would pick off the pawn on h2, restoring material balance. This one is going to end in peace.
Okay, so we expect a draw here. Let's go to the game between Jeffrey and Benjamin. It could be the final moves of the tournament for Benjamin Bach. And all right, it's looking like white has 0 chances to lose the game. And that's very bad news for all the Benjamin fans out there.
Yeah, the knight heading from f1 to e3. It seems like Jeffrey always has like 3 or 4 minutes on his clock. He can basically close his eyes and move back and forth, Robert. G3, king g2, king g1, if you want.
And I agree with the featured chat that Jeffrey is such a monster. He has earned the respect of all of the top players. I mean, even though his rating dipped below 2,700 classical, he doesn't play as much classical as probably he would like. But he, in these rapid formats, he's been a menace for years. In St. Louis Rapid and Blitz, he scored a 4.5 out of 9 score in the rapid tournament, beating 5-minute Caruana, and an even score against that field. That's real good.
Listen, we use the word professional to describe the move rook d2 that Jeffrey played. This is a serious compliment, and I would use it to describe Jeffrey's playing style as a whole. You just always feel like he's in control of the game, like he's making deliberate decisions. He knows which direction he's steering the game into, and this match is just a case in point. He was in control for move 1.
And I like that he didn't even play g3 after bishop f4 check. He doesn't want to change the pawn structure. He says everything is defended. Why create a little bit of hope anywhere? He can draw this 8 million different ways, but he's just doing the simplest thing. King h2, king g1, king h2, king g1.
Benjamin, come at me, bro. What are you going to attack? Which part? The b4 pawn, which is defended by the bishop, or this bishop, which is defended by the b4 pawn? It's a mutually symbiotic relationship right there.
It's wonderful. Don't you love it when there's mutual growth?
Oh, it's amazing. And finally, he does succumb to the temptation of pushing the g-pawn. But this is a watertight fortress. It's going to be draw.
It's a great bishop on f6.
Maybe you should trade it for white's bishop.
And then just lose the game?
Yep. That's exactly what I would propose, yes.
Well, a draw is a loss at this point, so you might as well.
He's going to try to get his king to b5. I wonder if Benjamin is going to even attempt. There aren't even any attempts. Like, even if you get the king to e2, what are you going to do then?
Nothing, because the bishop's terrible.
Exactly. And you could end up losing the g5 pawn if you move the bishop away from the diagonal.
By the way, Mamedyarov and Sarana did draw their game. It is still knotted 1.5 points apiece, so we will have undivided attention on that game, barring a surprise loss from Jeffrey Xiong here, who's up 3.5 minutes, who is up to nothing in the match, who has no losing chances whatsoever, unless you just blunder a piece.
Yep. Yeah, you can do this in a million different ways. Knight f5, knight e3, king g2, king g1. Jeffrey just making sure that he's not allowing a single potential chance to unbalance the game. If Jeffrey didn't need to draw, by the way, he would be playing for a win here. And maybe he already is.
Just something like that.
Because why not? He's not risking by playing knight c3.
Certainly not. This position is just a complete and utter draw. There's no hope for Benjamin. His pieces can't get active. The bishop on d8 in particular is a sad one. So he's just trying to muster up anything. He's playing because if he doesn't play, he's out of the tournament. So he is just prolonging his stay here.
And for Benjamin Bach, a good run at the CGC. Let's not forget who he beat in the first round, Robert. It was none other than Alexander Grishuk, whom he defeated in an incredibly tense Armageddon. So he definitely can hang his hat on that. Just an impressive run. He did his best, but Jeffrey Xiong, when he's on form, is just a buzzsaw.
Yeah, he was the favorite.
Is he trying to get his bishop to d3? Who's the favorite in which match?
I was saying Jeffrey was the favorite coming into this match.
Oh, yeah,
so
for sure.
For Benjamin, 2 upsets in a row against those players. It just wasn't meant to be this time around, but he'll be back. He'll always be Bach, but then
He'll be Bach?
he will continue to impress. And, well, he just has a few seconds on his clock.
We descended on that pun like a group of buzzards onto dead meat.
This game is just draw.
It is as lifeless as a piece of dead meat. Literally, Jeffrey can do whatever he wants.
I like that he's spending his time, though. Okay, the game is officially over. Jeffrey Xiong moves on, and you could see him sort of releasing all that tension there. He was like on edge to the very last move, and for Benjamin Bach, his time in the Chess.com Global Championship has come to an end. But Danya, we have to give a round of applause to him because his win over Alexander Grishuk, that ruined many people's bracket.
It did indeed. It was a great run, but at the end of the day, it is Jeffrey Xiong who makes his way into the round of 16. And of course, JKD, the Polish juggernaut, with a confident performance against Wang Hao, pulling out a draw in the first game, capitalizing on Wang Hao's shocking blunder in the second, and a smooth professional conversion to win game 3 and secure the match. Ladies and gentlemen, we have only one match left, and there is one game left to be played in that match. Shakar Mamedyarov and Alexei Sarana are all tied up at 1.5 apiece. Will they make another draw and go into the Armageddon, or will one of them strike to win the match and join Jeffrey Xiong and Jan Krzysztof Duda? There is only one way to find out, but before we do, a short break as we let the players prepare for this final game. You are watching the Chess.com Global Championship Round of 32, back with more Sarana Mamedyarov action on the other side of this break.
Open to anyone, all around the world.
Holy smokes!
The Chess.com Global Championship offers the dream of playing against the best.
Whoa!
And hey, have we mentioned there's also $1 million at stake?
The total pot is $1 million.
No, that is not a typo. The prizes are unbelievably generous.
We began with thousands of players. Now only dozens remain.
Why is he even moving?
Do
Just go.
something.
Wow.
Lost on time.
Wesley So makes it through 3-0.
The CGC knockout phase has arrived. There are those who played their way in, and some are here thanks to their well-earned reputations. No matter who you are, things are about to get very, very real.
Leonard Dominguez, he moves on to the round of 16.
A trip to the CGC finals and a clean shot at the largest first place prize of the year. My friends, it's the CGC round of 32. Who will take the next step to Toronto?
The many faces of Grandmaster Alexei Sarana. Currently, he is pensive. He is awaiting the start of his final match game against Shakir Mamedyarov here at the Chess.com Global Championship round of 32. The match is all tied up, 1.5, 1.5. Grandmaster Robert Hess and GM Daniel Naroditsky bringing you coverage of the CGC round of 32. Robert, what more could we ask for than a match that is all tied up, featuring two of the greatest players of our generation, of our time, duking it out for thousands of dollars and a chance to make the final 8?
Well, Alexei Sarana qualified his way here as the 6th seed in this group. Mamedyarov, he earned the right of invitation based on his historic performances over the years, the number 2 seed. But you asked, what more could we ask for? If you're Alexei Sarana, you ask for take back 2, because in game 2, when he played Queen B6 in a position that he could never lose, except, by the way, he did lose, that is what is leaving Mamedyarov in this match, not just in it, but tied. And with the black pieces in game 4, Mamedyarov will have to withstand the pressure that Sarana is about to put on him.
The first 10 moves are going to be absolutely critical. In game 2, they did play a Queen's Gambit accepted. Right now, they are repeating move for move the line that they played. We saw Alexei's e-pawn land on e4. I don't remember exactly how that happened. I think Shock played c4 at some point. That's how it happened.
Exactly. E4 is hanging. So this is a bit confusing for many people, because that pawn, why would you put it there when black can take it? But you shouldn't just take pawns when you are underdeveloped, when your king's in the center. So if we go back here, knight takes e4, that looks really, really good, doesn't it? Thank you for the pawn. But in positions like this, with a rook coming to e1, a pawn coming to d5, you are just crushing this king in the center.
Yeah, there's a small little thing called development, which black kind of lacks in this position. And this is the last kind of position you want against Alexei Sarana. Shakir prioritizing his kingside development with bishop e7, and I guess they've deviated from game 2, judging by Alexei's time usage here.
Right, the move bishop e7, there's no pawns push on the queen side for black, and I think that's better for Mamedyarov. Not that he has an advantage, not better in that way, but with the pawns closer to your pieces and not overextended, it feels like they're easier to keep a hold of. So I like the move bishop e7. I think e5, Danya, is extremely tempting. It wasn't happening in that previous game because the knight couldn't get to e4, but now it can.
I think a lot of people would be tempted by the move d5, and I think d5 needs to be considered. There's a classic idea after d5, e takes d5, e5, but black would respond not with e takes d5, but with something like c4. And Alexei taking the Hess route and playing e5.
Okay, well, that's probably a bad sign for Alexei Sarana. Knight e4 is the response. Let's plant our knight into enemy territory. We do not mind a trade of pieces here. That is what black wants. And Danya, I think when you and I see this position, we know that white could get the initiative with all the pieces on the board, but in certain endgames, this e5 pawn is a pawn that has gone too far.
Yeah, this is a battle of long-term and short-term factors. I think if you trade on e4 and you trade on c5, like you're saying, the e5 pawn, once black completes his kingside development and castles, will be a serious liability. If I'm Alexei, I'm seriously considering the move rook e1 to get a somewhat healthier pawn structure. Although in that ensuing position, black has the great d5 square for the bishop. He could get a massive blockade going in the center. And if white doesn't spark the flames of an initiative on the king side, I'm not exaggerating when I say that Alexei could end up being much worse.
Well, that's why he trades. I agree with you there. Capablanca would have loved that position from the black side. So we see queen e2. And if bishop f3, thank you very much, I will just simply take back. And the rook on e is loose. And we see players rooting for Mamedyarov. 10,000 pawns on the line here. Some people like to be paid in dollars. Other people like to be paid in pawns. Chess sets may be expensive these days. After the Queen's Gambit, all those chess sets sold out. So I get it. But Mamedyarov, he looks kind of exhausted to me, Danya. I mean, I'm looking at him here. He's like a little hunched over. He's played a long day of over the board chess. He'll need to be able to keep up the stamina in this fourth game.
Which is why he wants to avoid the Armageddon. I actually think both players want to avoid the Armageddon. The anxiety that comes along with it is not to anybody's liking. So I think both players here are willing to take risks. We have a sufficiently unbalanced position. But I like the way Mamedyarov has handled the opening. Right now, though, he has a big choice to make. Does he drop the bishop back to d5 and try to take the light-squared bishops off the board? Or does he retreat the bishop back to its initial b7 square?
Such a difficult question, because if there's a trade on d5, your queen looks good on d5, but it also is out in the open and can be attacked. And that could be a tempo you do not want to give your opponent after dc5 and rook d1. So not easy to say here. I think bishop b7 speaks to me more.
Yep.
I just don't want my queen to be kicked around.
No, it's calling my name as well. That is black's greatest asset. Also after bishop d5, just if we could very quickly show an example line. Bishop d5, bishop takes, queen takes. Let's assume that white plays like dc, right? It doesn't look dangerous, but rook d1 and rook c1 come really, really fast. dc, then rook d1, bishop b3, and rook ac1, no good. And Shakhriyar indeed chooses bishop b7.
And bishop b7 played, d takes c5, and very quickly knight d7. We actually see the eval bar saying white is significantly better.
Rook d1? Could it be because of rook d1, or is it?
And what if the queen just goes away?
There's also c6, like knight d4 and bishop takes e6 ideas that are calling my name.
We simply have to show that variation. Danya Chalamet calling his name knight d4. And this is a problem. You move the bishop back and bishop e6. Oh, or not. I mean, I was looking at that variation because knight takes and knight g7. But apparently you don't take back on e6 right away. There's
you can also play a slower move like rook d1 or even queen g4. I just feel like generally black is lacking in so many departments in this position.
Yeah, that's no good. I'm not into this, nor is the eval bar. But it's clear that, and he played c6. Alexei Sarana throws that pawn forward. Knight d4 is in fact played. This could be trouble for Mamedyarov. But what I was going to say quickly, Danya, is I feel like even though we have the eval bar and white is making progress, it's not like there's a game-ending move, at least not one that I see very clearly in the next few turns.
And let's not forget that white, the e5 pawn is still a weakness. If what I said earlier still stands, if black can castle, put a knight on c5, black can consolidate pretty darn quickly here. So the last thing Alexei can do is rest on his laurels. It is clear that he needs a tempo move in this position. Bishop takes c6, queen g4, rook d1. All of these qualify, but how do you decide here? It's such a complicated position, and your time is limited.
And queen g4 might run into knight takes e5 at the moment.
Exactly.
You get a grab g7, but bishop f6, and now things are probably falling apart for white there. Yep. So this is a big moment. And for Sarana, you know he's calculating the sacrifice, but you don't want to be lured into a decision that feels good, but is actually a mistake.
And one way that it could backfire quickly after bishop takes e6. First of all, black is not forced to take back on e6. Knight c5 needs to be seriously considered here. And the eval bar doesn't hate that move, so maybe knight c5 is actually the reason why bishop takes c6 is not the best move in this position.
And even if you take, and we get this kind of position here with knight g7, the open g file with the bishop on b7, it's not really a good look.
No, it's not. Queen g6 ideas, rook g8. Agree completely. I think Alexei's going to go rook d1. I think rook d1 is the move that you default to if you don't find anything more concrete.
The problem, though, with playing rook d1 is you see queen b6 as a follow-up. And you're like, if black gets those next two moves, am I really any better? I think bishop e3 is possible there. Queen can venture out to g4 at some point, as we've been talking about. So I do see the promise in White's position, but I also see the possibility that if you make one move that's a little bit too slow, you procrastinate, all of a sudden your entire advantage is out the window.
And what makes matters worse is that Alexei can sense that he's got the spark, he's got the initiative, but he might only have it for one move. And so he's more tempted to take a lot of time. And then you get into the sunk cost effect, right? Where you've invested 5-7 minutes. And if you don't find anything, Robert, you get more frustrated, and then you're more likely to make sort of a tilt move like bishop takes c6, even if you can sense that it's not the right solution. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
And rook d1 is on the board.
And it took him 2+ minutes. And even though he has 10 minutes on his clock, it's plenty of time. We did see what happened in game 2, the one he had lost, which he should never have lost, where cutting into the over the board assessment, and then you're not having enough time to find the plan to continue your decisive chances. So I don't know. I'm looking at this. I like White's position, obviously. All sorts of sacrifice in e6. And if I'm Mamedyarov here, I'm getting my queen out of here. I don't know if queen b6 was right or queen c7. I see the tactics on e6, but I'm still looking at e5.
One thing I'm not doing is castling short in this position, as you're implying. Castles runs into knight takes c6, and the entire queen side collapses. The benefit of putting the queen on b6, of course, is that queen does protect the e6 pawn. But now bishop e3 begs to be played. So hopefully Shocker has a response plan for that move. Maybe bishop c5, I don't know.
Free development for White. It's just every move coming in with a purpose and potentially gaining a tempo. So bishop c5, you mentioned, is a response to bishop e3. There could just be rook c1 after that. It feels like the tension is favorable for White.
Oh, absolutely. And it feels like whatever Black does, however he arranges his pieces, Castle's kingside always runs into knight takes c6. Even if you've gotten the queen away from d8, that knight on d7 is still going to be loose. It's going to be dead weight. And yet you have to keep it on d7 in order to protect the bishop on c5 in the event of bishop c5, rook a c1.
So bishop e3 played. Mamedyarov, if he moves his queen again, that's an admission that queen b6 was a mistake.
And he has nowhere good to move it. Then a sacrifice on e6 is very much on the table.
Yikes. Although queen c7, going after the e5 pawn with a second piece, maybe there's some merit to that, Danya?
There's definitely some merit to that. I think the situation after bishop c5, rook a c1 is absolutely dire. Black is paralyzed there. So maybe queen c7 is the best way to unbalance the game. Try to reverse this incredibly disturbing trend where with every move, White's initiative grows more and more menacing.
Yeah, this is not looking very good. And a great comment there about how Mamedyarov's name is worth double the points in Scrabble. And it was the comment was by the Constant Gardener, so a Ralph Fiennes fan, and good movie. I enjoyed that one. So that's a reference I didn't think I was going to make today. So bishop e3, discoveries galore against this queen. The knight would like to move to f5 or take on e6. Mamedyarov, he's in big trouble.
Yeah, I never heard of that movie, so you made me pay a bunch of fines.
Oh, gosh, you're making a Ralph. Oh, gosh. Oh, Danya.
Okay, Mamedyarov. He's taking his time. What are his candidate moves? I think it's bishop c5 and queen c7. I don't see a single other viable move. Maybe knight c5 can be considered as well. But something about that just feels so off. Maybe just bishop c2, threatening b4.
That looks highly unpleasant.
I mean, the most depressing thing about this is White hasn't even sacrificed a pawn.
Nope. No, this is really not what you want. No, this is terrible. So queen c7 going after the e5 pawn apparently is a huge mistake. The eval bar is skyrocketing here. Why? I'm not sure, but it's very, very bad.
Well, it's not bishop takes c6, I think, because then after fe, knight takes c6, queen takes c5, I think Black is stable. But I suppose it's a moot point now because Shak has indeed put his knight on c5. And if I'm Alexei, I'm contemplating just playing bishop c2 quickly and conserving at least 7 minutes or so to keep conducting the initiative.
I would say the good thing that I continue to think about for Mamedyarov is that the position is even by material. So you're just hoping that you can withstand this immediate onslaught, castle your king, and then you're like, all right, material's fine. But with this pin, with the coordination of White's pieces and Black's lack thereof, there's just problems everywhere.
Rome is burning here, and you can envision a scenario where, you're castled, but the problems on the queen side exist independently of whether or not Black is castled, which makes Shakir's defensive task even more difficult. And there's that bishop c2 move, and he played it relatively quickly.
And you know b4 is coming, so what are you going to do about it? You can play b4 yourself, but that's not exactly the healthiest move to play, giving away the light squares, and then this queen is going to dart over to the king side, and you're not castling to g8 anytime soon with this pawn on h7. So queen c7 played.
Well, that seems natural to me. The eval bar, not the biggest fan. But Alexei has to keep his foot on the gas pedal. How does he do that? Black, quote unquote, a queen takes c5, Robert, is a serious threat. Alexei has to prepare something against that move. You can't just give that pawn away for free.
This definitely looks to me like one of those positions where you make one wrong move and you no longer have an advantage. So plus 3.4, that seems like an overwhelming edge. Sarana has to win. This is not clear. There's just nothing that screams to me as there's the winning move.
I would also argue that this creates a psychological disadvantage for Alexei. Again, he's the one who has to invest all of these minutes making sure that the fires of the initiative keep on burning. For Shakir, his play is quite a bit easier. He's just reacting to the threats, and he's building up a pretty significant time advantage that could serve him well, even if he's still lost objectively. And there's bishop f4, and the eval bar takes a dip.
Yes, only slightly better for White. Now, it's with more depth, trying to figure out and stabilize what the evaluation is. But, Danya, I think we're both in the same boat here, that White is better. We would take White in every single game we played with this position. But there is no obvious knockout. And 2 moves from now, Black could fully stabilize.
100%. You think about Black castling, putting a rook on d8. And, we got to return to the fact that the bishop on b7 is a big asset for Shakir that he has not tapped into yet because he's been reacting to all of the threats. And you can see him continuing to turn the wheels, trying to consolidate, but Alexei just keeps pounding him on all sides of the board.
And, that apparently was a mistake. A huge mistake.
Is it because of b4? I don't know. It's hard to say why. I mean, queen b8 looks so natural. You're moving away from the pin, for goodness sake.
Yes, but it seems to be a tremendous error, and I think b4 is...
Gotta be b4.
Because where's this knight going?
Okay, let's say I go back to d7. Are you saying it's something like bishop e4?
I think there might be knight e6 and queen h5 as well. I don't know if it leads to mate, but a situation like this, you have to go king f8. And where is the checkmate?
There's gotta be something.
Is it just like a calm bishop
b3? I think it's just a quiet move. Look at Black's pieces. Black is totally paralyzed.
Oh my gosh. But that's really difficult to see. We're aided by the fact that the eval bar is screaming that there's a win. To get to queen h5 is easy, right? This position is easy. But then you're very tempted to make some kind of like bishop h6 or ultra aggressive move like rook d4. And maybe rook d4 is still good, but no, it's not, right?
There's a case in point.
You're trying to find a logical move, and it doesn't work, so it backfires. So b4, knight d7, knight takes e6, not easy to assess, but easy to see for players of this level.
100%. What a lot of people forget is that not all +4 positions are the same. You could be +4 and up a piece and completely winning. This type of +4 offers a lot more practical chances for Shakir Mamedyarov, but Alexei, he has shoved his pawn up to b4. He chases the knight out of c5. And Shakir now has to decide between knight a4 and knight d7. This is the moment of truth, Robert. Will he grab the pawn on e6? And will he find the bishop b3 follow-up?
I think he will. Alexei Sarana is a fantastic tactician. He recognized the king will not be safe. The one reason I would say he might not play it is if he doesn't see a checkmate and he starts investing 3 minutes of his remaining 5.5, then he's like, I don't have time for the follow-up. Like, I know I have something here. I intuit it. Where is it?
Queen G4 is also very tempting. So I feel like he might be led down the Primrose path with a move like Queen G4 that basically keeps the initiative without sacrificing anything. Maybe that's also a decent move.
Queen G4 to my eyes looks pretty good. If you castle, there's Bishop H6. Oh, but then there's Queen takes E5. He goes for it.
Oh my
Huge
lands! But
move.
will he find Bishop B3?
I imagine he will, but there is no room for error often in these positions. Here's the critical moment. This part wasn't that hard. Bishop
And
B3
I think, and he's done it, and he's done it in 10 seconds.
I mean, Danya and I are not on camera, but we both react in the same way. Hands up, just like, what can you do when you're playing an Alexei Sarana like this?
A sip of water, total confidence, cold-blooded assassin. Bishop B3, and black is powerless to stop the devastating Bishop takes C6. I think G6 might be Shakhriyar's only chance to prolong the game. But then I guess White can just play even just Queen G4. Or Bishop H6 and Queen G4.
Doesn't look like it's really going to help you survive there. It might be the only try. Because the plan is simple. Takes and mate. Bishop D5 is met by rook takes and mate, I think. That looks pretty good. Even just bishop takes D5 there is sufficient. So, Danya, this is just an absolute obliteration.
I think the death knells are beginning to sound for Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. What's so instructive about this is that even though you sacrifice a piece, that doesn't mean you always need to make tempo moves. A lot of people forget that. Bishop B3 is a quiet move. Yes, White is down a piece. Yes, Black has more minor pieces than White does, but that is totally unhelpful because the potential of these minor pieces to defend against Bishop takes C6 is zilch.
And you can see it on Mamedyarov's face right now.
Oh, yeah.
He knows that his journey in the Chess.com Global Championship might come to an end. He's nervous. He sees that his king is in grave danger. And besides G6, Dana, I don't know what other move can be played.
I think you have to play G6. You have to hope that Alexei panics in time pressure, but he's not even in time pressure. He's got plenty of time. I mean, this is just good night, goodbye. See you later. See you in the round of 16. Well, we won't be seeing Shakhriyar on the round of 16 unless something crazy happens in the next couple of moves.
G6.
Okay, there's G6. Okay, this is one more big moment. Can Alexei stay precise? I think Queen G4 is most accurate here.
I really like Queen G4. I'm guessing many things win, like Bishop H6 or Queen H6, but Queen G4 just to take this pawn in this manner, line up the battery, go for mate. So I like
There's
that.
a beautiful line. Queen H6, King F7, Bishop takes C6, and Queen H3.
As soon as you said beautiful line, it immediately came to me. Check. It's not mate. Check. It's still not mate, but down goes your queen over here.
Yep.
And Queen H6 check played. Alexei Sarana is a man on a mission. He threw away game 2 after escaping in game 1, but no more Houdini acts. Look at Mamedyarov. He knows what's happening here. He is crushed.
We were looking at his camera during the break. He was mad, but he was mad, not tilted, right? He was angry. He was determined to prove himself, not tilted and giving up the match. Alexei Sarana stays calm, stays cold-blooded, and he is just a couple of moves away from making his way into the round of 16. It's still not over, though, Robert. He needs to be careful. Bishop F7 check and E6, I think, would be a very unwise way to try to convert. It would give Black 3 pieces for the queen.
That's exactly how you don't win positions like this. And everybody in the chat is excited. We appreciate you all getting involved. Glad to show your chats on screen here. But for Alexei Sarana, down now under 4 minutes.
It's not over.
It isn't. It's plus 10, but it's not plus 10 because you're up 2 rooks. And he goes great for the second time.
Queen G7 is unstoppable.
Bishop B3. Calm, cool, collected, super grand master Alexei Sarana. The guy is just on fire.
Good night, Queen G7. And it's as if trapping the rook was enough. You're also threatening checkmate in 1 on F7. Shakhriyar has no purchase in the center. There isn't a single anchor point for his bishop or for his rook. Alexei Sarana's pieces are in perfect concert. It's a symphony of threats. And Alexei Sarana is the hero of Game 4.
And I'm glad we have front row seats because this is an amazing display of tactical awareness, of the ability to show restraint instead of giving up a piece and thinking I have to deliver a checkmate or gain a queen in response. This is really nice stuff. And I'm just going to show everybody that variation that Danya mentioned you shouldn't go for, right? Bishop f7 check, king takes f7, e6. Give me this queen over here. It is still winning for white, objectively speaking, but you will get a third minor piece, these 3 pieces here, for this queen, and that would give black some hope. But instead, we saw the bishop retreat. Now we see a trade of rooks. Is it that simple? Is it queen g7, or does that allow... No, there's no queen g4 because queen f7 is made.
f5. And then you could even play bishop g5 probably, but there's like many ways to do this track. It's on the board. E6. How about that? And queen f7.
That's sickening.
Isn't that gorgeous?
That is gross.
Does that actually win on the spot?
E6 threatening queen f7 checkmate, because if this pawn lands on f7, the king is still mated. The rook cuts it off in the d file. That is unreal.
That would be the cherry on top. Alexei, so patient. He's got 3 minutes to figure out 1 or 2 more moves. E6 is far from the only win, but it is the prettiest. Will it be played on the board? And it is.
Oh my gosh.
And there it is.
Oh my gosh. This is Alexei Sarana's immortal. This is a blistering attack. He's just nodded his head a little bit. He sees queen f7 checkmate. Mamedyarov sees no way to stop it. Danya, this is gorgeous chess.
And this is saying a lot, Robert. Alexei Sarana has won RCC weekend tournaments before, but that pales in comparison to the incredible display that we have just seen. He knocked Shahryar Mamedyarov out of the park. Shahryar is a top 10 world player. You don't just do this to Shahryar in a critical game, except Alexei Sarana just did.
This is game over. Match over. Alexei Sarana moves on to the round of 16. This is one of the bigger upsets in the field. 71% of the community predicted Shahryar Mamedyarov would win. He is gone off screen and from the tournament. Alexei Sarana wins this match 2.5, 1.5. And Danya, I think we both will acknowledge it was completely deserved because he won game 1. He let game 2 go in just shocking fashion. He couldn't believe it. And then he held on and won this beautiful game 4, one of the best games I've seen in recent memory.
I just can't get over how he calmed himself down. He had 2 minutes to do that. He's playing Mamedyarov. The momentum is entirely not on his side. He plays a phenomenal game 3, neutralizing shock with the black pieces. And then the display that we just saw is one that he is going to savor for years to come. He is going to tell his grandkids about this moment. And the greatest thing is that his journey is not over. He makes his way into the round of 16, and he is going to try to make it count. What a match. In fact, we had 3 amazing matches today. 2 of them had concluded before the 4th game, and one of them just concluded right now. Alexei Sarana is today's hero, and he will be joining us for an interview. We're going to set him up. Do not go anywhere. We'll have an interview with Alexei, and we'll offer our concluding thoughts on this amazing day of CGC action on the other side of this short break. Welcome back to the Chess.com Global Championship. Well, the odds were stacked against him. At least that's what the community thought. The community assigned a 71% probability to Shakhar Mamedyarov, but it was not to be because Alexei Sarana, he had something to say about it, and he defeats Shak with a last round amazing game, and now he joins us for an interview. Alexei, thank you so much for giving us some time. First question, how are you feeling right now?
Yeah, I feel myself perfect. Before the match, I didn't expect a lot. I saw that Shah played rapid tournament today, and it was amazing. He won it with a huge score. And only first game, I think, changed a lot. I think I was almost losing, and anyhow.
Yeah, it was a crazy swindle.
Yeah, and then in time trouble somehow I won. And he got tilted, and of course in second game, very stupid game, it was funny. I don't know, I saw that few times I can win even a bishop in the same game, but yeah. That's happened,
Yeah,
and last game, yeah.
Well, how about you take us through your emotions, Alexio? First of all, congratulations. Amazing victory, second match in a row you've won. But in game two, right, you make this queen. You were much better, if not winning, throughout the game. And then queen b6 happens.
Sorry,
How do you...
hear you very bad.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
Let's try it.
I hear Dania much better.
Okay. I'll just ask the question that you were asking, Robert, which is to take us through your emotions. You had obviously that incredibly frustrating game two. You play queen b6. How did you calm yourself down after you lost that heartbreaking game? What were you telling yourself during the break between the second and third games?
Yeah, it was really hard, but I just took the bottle and throw it a bit under the wall, and it helps a bit, really, it helps.
Oh, trust me, I know.
Yeah.
And then you come back and you play an incredibly solid game three.
Yeah, and
but let's
game
talk...
three...
Go ahead, Alexei, sorry.
Yeah, and game three, very solid, I think. Maybe a bit worse, but managed to draw very easily, I think.
Okay,
and let's switch to game... Yeah, go ahead.
I hope you can hear me again, Alexei. Sorry about that. But game four, is this your immortal? That's what I called it. This is a beautiful game from you. So why don't you take us through it, because it was so unbelievable.
Yeah, okay. He surprised me with move. A6, knight e3, bishop e7, e4, bishop e7. He surprised me. e5. I decided to play. Yeah, knight e4, knight. I decided to take queen e2. And I don't know, after bishop b7 this year, it looks like I have a lot of tempers and have very good initiative. I don't know what he had to do.
No, I mean, you played a great game here. This part of the game is just...
It looks nice, yeah. Bishop b7, rook d1, everything with attack. But there a bit I misplayed. Bishop b3, knight c5, bishop c2, I missed queen c7 that I can play rook c1 and anything, just pawn on e5 hanging. So I had to play bishop f4 after bishop queen c7, and I think the castle still playable position. I don't know why he didn't play this. Yeah, probably rook ac1 before, still very dangerous. Yeah. But rook ac1, I thought that he will play before. Maybe immediately before. maybe immediately I should play before and rook a1, and after knight c3, just queen d3, yeah, just winning. Yes. Oh, no. Yeah. So yeah, probably
Just
this bet.
moving on.
Yes, so rook d8, but after rook d8, he rook a1, everything's so good. Maybe again he should play before, but after, yeah,
But
after
how much did you
queen
see
d8,
here? When did you see knight takes e6? Like, how far in advance did you see this move?
almost immediately it looks. I saw that after takes queen h5, king f8, bishop b3 looks so bad. Anyways, I thought even about move g6. Maybe he should play. No, not there before. And calculate something like bishop g6, take fg. Of course, I can take queen h8, but after knight f8, black still struggling somehow. Even normal position, yeah, completely normal. I thought that I should take on g6, king f8, bishop h6, rook h6, queen h6, and there king g8, king queen e6, of course, king f7, and I king h7, queen h7, nice move. And if king f8, then rook takes d7, and queen h8,
Ooh,
and queen b8.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a gorgeous line.
Well, this is why I
Yeah,
love
and
going over games.
if king e8, immediately on queen h7, then I go queen h5, and then rook d7. Same.
Oh my goodness!
Amazing.
Well, Danya and I were in disbelief. I mean, Danya, any questions about this immortal from Alexei?
No, this is amazing, Alexei. And of course, we were also very impressed with the final move, e6. The fact that you mate with a pawn, is that is
This
that meaningful
position
to you?
already I have a very big initiative. First I thought that bishop g3, but then I finally found e6, and just resign. He should.
Yeah, that is an amazing move. Alexei, I had one more question for you. When you're playing the CGC matches, do you feel like your experience in the Rapid Chess Championship is helping you? Do you feel more comfortable with the time control and the general format because of your extensive participation in the RCC?
Yeah, I think it means a lot. I have a lot of experience. I played almost every Rapid Chess Championship, and I used to this time control a lot. And I think that some top players who played less, that's the problem. I used to this control a lot, especially with 2-second increment. I think usually in real life we play with 10-second increment, but there with 2-second increment, I think I used to play much better, which maybe happened in the first game, for example.
Right, in the time trouble, you were able to come out on top. And Alexei, your next matchup is against Jan Krzysztof Duda. How are you feeling about that one? Because of course he's such a strong player.
I think that Duda is very strong, and I have even less chances. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll try my best.
Well, if you demonstrate the kind of form you did today, Alexei, I think Jan Krzysztof has a lot to be worried about. But we will let you take your well-deserved rest. Grandmaster Alexei Sarana, thank you so much for joining us for the interview, and good luck in the round of 16.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, Alexei. Congratulations.
Thank you. And that was all she wrote, Alexei Sarana. You can see the overall bracket here. He is through to the group of 16. He will be facing JKD, who defeated Wang Hao very convincingly. Robert, Alexei Sarana, he is one of the remaining dark horses, one of the remaining players below 2,700 but nobody wants to face him. He is a nightmare pairing for absolutely everybody.
And what a humble guy he is. We just heard him speak. He showed us incredible variations, like 12 moves deep, where he's winning a queen on the back rank thanks to a rook sack for a knight. And then he's like, I'm a huge underdog. I mean, maybe he's an underdog, but Alexei Sarana is one of the best players on the planet. Everybody knows about him, and yet he remains modest. He works very hard in his game, and as he said, his experience should help him against Jan Krzysztof Duda. Duda is an amazing rapid player, no questions about that, but Sarana, he's becoming more and more confident thanks to his experience in these time controls, his success in the Rapid Chess Championship, and week in and week out, and then here in the Global Championship, beating Vidit Gujrathi and beating Shakhriyar Mamedyarov.
And speaking of confidence, speaking of professionalism, in our Group C bracket, we have a matchup of the ages, an all-American matchup between the top seed Wesley So and the third seed Jeffrey Xiong. Jeffrey's path has been a smooth one and a difficult one at the same time. He defeated Bortnik, defeated Benjamin Bach, all the while avoiding Armageddon. For Wesley So, it was a convincing victory over Vasily Ivanchuk. But Robert, I don't think I'm speaking too controversially when I say that Wesley is going to have to step up his game against Jeffrey Xiong, because Jeffrey isn't going to have the same level of problems on the clock that really brought Vasil down yesterday.
He certainly won't. And for people who have been around for a while, they'll remember the 2021 Speed Chess Championship. I know, shorter time controls, but Jeffrey jumped out to a lead against Wesley. He tilted Wesley. And just when Jeffrey was on the verge of continuing his winning streak, all hell broke loose. He ended up losing in a very important game, and then Wesley stormed back, won that match, I believe something like 18-14, if my memory serves me well. So these two have a long history. They've battled it out online plenty, and so Jeffrey Xiong will be a very tough competitor for Wesley So to take down.
It will indeed, and we will have more tough competitors for you tomorrow. You will not have to wait long for more epic matches. Tomorrow is an absolutely unmissable day, so set your alarms bright and early. We've got 4 early matchups coming your way at 4 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Central European Standard Time. Anish Giri, Norbek Abdusattorov, Dingley Ren. Nobody strong was available to play tomorrow. Not in the early section, not in the late section.
Love these matchups because Anish Giri, on paper, right, he's much higher rated than Raunik Sidwani, but we've seen Raunik spring off upset after upset. Then on the other side over there, Abdusattorov, he's playing against the upset specialist. Pavel Pankratov, in everybody's bracket, was not here. Right? He was not beating Vishyanin, was he? And yet he was able to get over his game 4 gaff. He then wins in Armageddon. He earned his spot here. Dingley Ren against Yesepenko. We know Yesepenko beat Magnus Carlsen in classical chess, so why not Dingley Ren in rapid? And then last but certainly not least, speaking of unretired players, please, Vladimir Kramnik, keep on going. But Nihal Sarin and the many Indian fans who watch this competition, they're like, nuh-uh, we want to send you back into your vacation from chess.
You just get the sense that Nihal Sarin against Vladimir Kramnik is going to be a matchup for the ages. And if that's not enough action for you in the morning, in our afternoon shift, we have 3 more epic matches, which include, of course, everybody's favorite Hikaru Nakamura, who has a difficult task ahead of him. David Navarra is no pushover. He has made a name for himself over the course of more than a decade, a very strong blitz player, a very strong tactician. Hikaru Nakamura did not have a smooth round of 64 victory against Rodrigo Vasquez, and he has an even more difficult challenge ahead. Jan Nepomniachtchi against Peter Svidler and Levon Aronian against Maxim Matlikov. 2 excellent matches round out the day. The afternoon matches are coming your way at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern time. So, Robert, a full day of action. What more can you ask? Kramnik, Nepo, Svidler, Hikaru, Aronian, everybody's favorite, converges tomorrow.
It feels like an overload, right? I can't handle all of these top players in a single day. Like I just don't know where my attention is going to go. And it's been a pleasure to commentate, and it will continue to be a pleasure to commentate. The Global Championship, Danya, has been a blast. Every single match has its own spice, right? It's unique in its own way. And what a way to end our day with Alexei Sarana getting that victory And I mean, what a monster match that was.
For the final move of today to be e5, e6, I think symbolizes the kind of effort, the kind of heart, and just sweat that these players are putting into each and every game, because there's so much on the line. There's money, there's pride, and these players are bringing their A game to the table, match in and match out. And I'm sure we will see more where that came from tomorrow. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, the time has come for us to wrap up today's coverage of the CGC round of 32. Coverage resumes tomorrow bright and early at 4 a.m. Pacific, with 4 morning matches followed by 3 afternoon matches at 9 a.m. Pacific. But for now, we would like to thank everybody in the chat. We'd like to thank our producer, Big, for another excellent broadcast. And of course, to you, Grandmaster Robert Hess, always a pleasure. This was so much fun. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to enjoy our weekend. It is time to enjoy 7 amazing matches tomorrow. We bid you a great rest of your Friday. Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky saying goodbye from the Chess.com Global Championship. See you tomorrow, bright and early, for more epic matches. Goodbye.